Welcome, drifters. Today we will explore a place that devours all who have sinned, Tartarus, the deep abyss where even the gods fear to look, but not all souls are doomed to torment. Some find their way to Elysium, a paradise of light, calm, and eternal rest. Tonight we drift between these two ancient realms, one forged in fire and chains, the other blooming with peace and gold. If you find comfort in these journeys, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. It truly helps me keep bringing you more. Now let's begin. Tartarus was the vast, dark pit that lay beneath the earth, older than the gods themselves and central to the earliest Greek stories of how the world began. The ancient Greeks imagined the universe as a giant sphere, almost like a huge egg. The top half of this cosmic egg was the sky, a solid dome that arched high above everything, while the bottom half was Tartarus, shaped like an inverted dome or bowl, stretching downward into endless shadow. Between these two vast halves was the earth, a flat and wide disk that floated like a divider in the middle of it all. Above this disk lived the gods and humans, walking under the bright sky, while below it was a place of gloom and howling storms, the place where the defeated titans were locked away, a prison of eternal thunder and wind. Though many thought of the land of the dead, ruled by Hades, as lying deep beneath the surface, it was not the same as Tartarus. In fact, the gap between Hades and Tartarus was said to be just as deep, as the sky was high above the earth. Some said Hades was found at the ends of the earth, past the great river Okeanos, in the faraway place where the sun set, while others believed it was buried in the deep hollow of the earth's belly. But deeper still, unreachable and terrible, was Tartarus, hidden beneath layers of gloom and shadow, where the titans were thrown after they tried to overthrow the new gods. This pit was not just a hole, but was secured with mighty bronze walls, solid and unbreakable, and guarded by monstrous beings called the Hecatoncheires, who had 100 hands each and could shake the earth with their strength. Inside this terrible place stood gates made of iron and a great bronze threshold, behind which were chained the forces that once tried to rule the cosmos. The god who embodied Tartarus was not shaped like a man, but was the pit itself, a pure and ancient force. He fathered one child with Gaia, the earth herself, and that child was Typhoeus, a massive, twisting creature with the body of a storm and the head of a snake, whose breath was like fire and whose roar brought chaos. Typhoeus rose against the heavens in fury and tried to take the throne of the gods, but Zeus, king of the sky, rose to meet him. A terrible battle followed, one that shook the cosmos, but Zeus was stronger, and he hurled Typhoeus back down into the depths of Tartarus, where the monster was trapped. From there, Typhoeus still churned the winds and brought hurricanes, his rage trapped deep beneath the world, stirring the storms that sweep across the earth. Tartarus was not a place of men, not even of ordinary souls after death. It was a space of punishment and power, where divine beings who defied the order of the cosmos were sent in chains. But over time, as stories changed and poets retold them, Tartarus began to blend with the realm of Hades. Later, writers started to imagine Tartarus not only as a pit for the titans, but also as a place where the worst of the dead were sent to suffer, a hell full of punishment and torment. But in the oldest tales, it remained something more, an ancient hole in the world, dark and terrifying, beneath even the dead, beneath even hope. In Homer's Iliad, Zeus threatens any god who dares to disobey him during the Trojan War with being hurled into that pit, to fall endlessly until they reach the gates of iron and the floor of bronze far beneath the land of Hades, beneath even the night. He says this to remind them of Tartarus's horror, a place where not even light or wind could reach, guarded by unyielding barriers that not even gods could break. When he scolded Hera, he reminded her that even if she fled to the deepest parts of sea and earth, where the old gods Iapetos and Chronos were trapped in silence and darkness, there would be no escape from his power, for Tartarus had no sun and no breath of wind. It was cut off from joy, a place surrounded by a deep nothingness. Hesiod, in his Theogony, also speaks of this pit during his tale of the war between the gods and the Titans. When the gods defeated the Titans, they did not merely imprison them somewhere on earth. Instead, they were hurled into Tartarus to fall beneath the roots of all things, to a depth beyond imagining. There, with bronze gates sealed by Poseidon and watched over by the 100-armed guards, the Titans were sealed away forever, unable to rise again. Tartarus was not simply beneath the earth, it was beneath the very idea of earth. To reach it, one would have to fall for 9 days and 9 nights, only arriving at the bottom on the 10th day. No light could reach it, and no escape was possible. It was as if the pit had been made to hold the greatest threats the world had ever known, to keep the chaos of the past locked away, so the gods above could rule in peace. The idea of this bottomless prison, where Typhoeus still roared and the Titans still slumbered in chains, remained powerful in the imagination of all who told these tales. Tartarus was not a place people visited, not even the dead, unless they were cursed beyond measure. It was not the afterlife, but a punishment beyond the afterlife. It was not a landscape, but a force, something older than memory. A dark wound in the center of the universe, where time stood still and storms were born. And though the stories of gods and men filled the upper world with light and action, deep beneath them, in the silence and the cold, the bronze gates of Tartarus stood closed, holding back the fury of what had once been, and what could never be allowed to return. The Olympian gods stood bravely with powerful beings who had 100 hands each, known as the Hecatoncheires, in a fierce battle against the mighty Titans. Both sides were equally determined, each showing their strength and courage by hurling enormous rocks and powerful missiles at one another. The Titans fought hard, their giant bodies full of anger and pride, unwilling to surrender easily. Around them, the vast ocean roared loudly, filling the air with the noise of crashing waves and stormy winds. The earth shook violently beneath their feet, groaning and splitting apart under the force of the struggle. Even the wide heavens trembled, shaken by the great powers clashing below. High above, Mount Olympus itself swayed dangerously from side to side, its firm foundations shuddering under the weight of the battle between the immortal gods and the powerful Titans. The heavy noise of their footsteps echoed deeply into the lowest parts of the world, reaching even the dim depths of Tartarus. Far below, in the dark pit beneath the earth, the terrible sounds of conflict shook the silence of that gloomy place. The struggle was intense, but slowly the strength of the Olympian gods and the Hecatoncheires began to overpower the Titans. Eventually, the gods defeated their opponents, and the Titans fell, conquered and weak, their great rebellion crushed. The Hecatoncheires then hurled many missiles upon the Titans, burying them beneath the heavy earth and confining them forever inside the dark pit of Tartarus. There, deep under the world, the Titans were bound tightly in strong chains, their punishment severe and unending. This pit of Tartarus was so deep beneath the earth that a heavy bronze object falling from the heavens would take 9 full days and nights to reach the earth, and from there it would take another 9 full days and nights to finally land in the bottom of Tartarus itself on the 10th day. Around this deep and terrifying pit stood an enormous wall made entirely of bronze, an impenetrable fence that circled it completely. The thick darkness of night surrounded the pit in layers, forming a triple line of shadows that kept the Titans locked securely inside. Far above, the roots of the earth stretched out, entangled with the waters of the unfruitful sea, sealing away this terrible prison from the rest of the world. It was Zeus, the mighty ruler of the skies, who had decided this fate for the defeated Titans. Following his powerful command, they were locked away in Tartarus, hidden beneath endless mist and shadows. At the very ends of the vast earth they lay trapped in gloomy darkness, unable to ever escape their fate. To further secure the pit, Poseidon himself crafted gates of bronze, placing them carefully around its entrance. A huge wall ran continuously around Tartarus, guarding every direction to make sure nothing could escape from within. Standing guard over these gates and walls were the loyal Hecaton carers, Gyes, Kotos, and Obriarius, who faithfully served Zeus, protecting this terrible place from harm. They lived there forever, keeping watch over the Titans, ensuring their punishment would never end. Tartarus itself was a place of endless darkness, a gloomy space that the gods themselves hated and feared. It was considered the very edge of the universe, the deepest point beneath the earth, where all things began and ended. This terrible gulf was so deep and vast that if a human ever entered through the gates, he would fall for an entire year before reaching the cold, damp bottom. During that endless fall, powerful blasts of wind would toss him around mercilessly, pushing and pulling him violently from one side to another without ever finding rest. Even the immortal gods trembled at the thought of such an awful place, for the power of Tartarus was beyond comprehension. Within the eternal darkness stood the frightening home of Nyx, the goddess of night. Her house was wrapped completely in thick clouds of blackness, a place of gloom where no light ever penetrated. Outside her home, the Titan Atlas, a son of the Titan Iapetos, stood forever unmoving, carrying the heavy weight of the wide heavens upon his head and powerful hands. Atlas never grew tired and never moved from his position, eternally supporting the massive sky above. Near Atlas stood the great bronze threshold of Nyx's house, where each day Nyx and Hemera, the goddess of day, approached each other quietly. They never stayed together inside the house at the same time, but instead took turns entering and leaving through the heavy bronze door. Each morning, Hemera would leave the house, bringing daylight to the world above, while Nyx entered to rest. Then at evening, they exchanged places again, Nyx emerging from her house to spread darkness across the land, while Hemera returned home to sleep. This endless cycle continued without pause, each goddess silently acknowledging the other as they passed. The ancient bronze house never contained both at once. One goddess was always outside, roaming the earth, while the other rested within the dark chambers. This silent exchange marked the boundary between light and darkness, day and night, continuously repeating without end. All of these things, the fearful pit of Tartarus, the Titans imprisoned within its endless gloom, the loyal guardians watching over its gates, the terrible home of Nyx wrapped in clouds, and Atlas standing firm beneath the heavy heavens, were part of the great and ancient order of the world. Together, they represented a hidden realm of mystery, punishment, and eternal darkness, a place that existed beyond the reach of human beings and even the gods themselves. These powerful forces of the universe maintained their balance deep within Tartarus, forever hidden beneath the earth, sealed away from sight. The Titans would never escape their chains, the gates of bronze would never open, and the darkness would never lift from this terrifying place. It was a realm that no living being could fully understand, a secret space of shadows and power that would remain forever untouched, deep within the heart of the world. At the farthest ends of the world, where the light of the sun never shines and the gods seldom tread, there lies a realm so deep and hidden that even the immortals fear it. Here, in the vast darkness, waits the goddess of the night, terrible and old, cloaked in a thick cloud of mist. She does not move until the time of her journey comes, and when it does, she makes her silent path across the sky, passing the great bronze threshold in silence. One of her daughters brings the light of day to the earth, casting her glow over the lands of men and gods, while the other remains cradling the soft spirit of sleep in her arms. This second daughter, keeper of dreams and silence, holds close to her Hypnos, the gentle god of sleep, who in turn is the twin of Thanatos, the god of death. These children of the night dwell together in the shadowed corners of existence, where no ray of the sun dares to reach, not when the sun rises into the heavens with his golden chariot, nor when he descends again, casting long shadows across the earth, does he ever look upon their faces. They live hidden from his sight, wrapped in gloom, untouched by the warmth of the day. Nearby, before the gates that lead into the deepest pit of the earth, stand the echoing halls of the Lord of the Dead, who rules alongside his silent queen. Their palace looms in darkness, standing solemn and still, surrounded by quiet and mist. There too lives another ancient and dreadful goddess, shunned even by the deathless ones, the terrible Styx. She is the oldest daughter of the ever-flowing river that circles the earth, and she makes her home apart from all others. Her house is grand, built from massive stones and arched high with silver columns that reach toward the heavens, gleaming even in the dim places where light has no home. Deep beneath the ground, beneath the wide roads of the world, a single stream from the great river flows through the night just for her, a sacred portion set apart from the rest. While the other 9 streams of the river flow in silver loops across the sea and the lands, this 10th stream breaks away, bursting from a hidden rock and causing endless trouble for the gods who must swear their oaths upon its waters. The earth, the sea, the sky, and the deep pit of shadows all find their beginning and end in this distant place, where time itself seems still. It is a loathsome region, full of thick mist and unyielding darkness, damp and hateful even to the gods. There stand gates made of shining bronze that never move, their foundations so deep and strong that no power can shake them. These gates, rooted endlessly into the earth, were not built by hand but grew on their own, ancient and terrible. Beyond these gates, far away from all the gods and beyond the shadows of chaos itself, the Titans live in silence. They are hidden from the world they once tried to rule, pushed far beyond the reach of sky and light, deep in the outermost limits of the cosmos. According to the old stories, this edge of the world was where the flat earth met the curving dome of the sky above, and the rising walls of the underworld below. The sky arched like a great ceiling over all things, while Tartarus, the pit beneath, rose like a dark mountain turned upside down, surrounding everything in a shell shaped like a cosmic egg. Just as the heavens stretched high above the earth, so too did Tartarus stretch far below, making it the mirror of the sky, yet filled with gloom instead of stars. After the king of the gods had cast down the rebellious Titans from the sky, the earth herself, ancient and wise, gave birth to one last child. This was Typhoeus, a monstrous being born from her union with the dark pit below. He was not born in the light like other creatures, but came from the deep, the son of earth, and the lowest depths of the world, aided by the power of golden desire. Typhoeus rose with fury, challenging the heavens and shaking the foundations of creation with his might. When he came, the sky groaned and the earth howled, the oceans churned wildly, and even the great river that circled all things trembled in its course. The very walls of the world, both above and below, shook with fear. The clash between Typhoeus and the sky's ruler was unlike anything the world had seen. When the god of thunder unleashed his fury, the sound filled every corner of existence. The ground shook beneath his feet, the sky blazed with lightning and the sea boiled with storm. The deep pit of Tartarus echoed with the noise of their battle, rumbling with the weight of the struggle. The earth itself seemed to seethe and boil, and the sky, once calm and wide, reeled above in wild confusion. The roots of mountains shifted, the flow of rivers faltered, and the unseeable boundaries of the universe trembled at the might of their fight. This battle was not only for power, but for the very shape and balance of the cosmos. It was a moment when everything, light, dark, sea, sky, death, sleep, and dream, held its breath as the forces of above and below collided in thunder and fire. And the sea roared with fury, the long waves crashing against every shore with wild power, surrounding the world in noise and force as the deathless gods moved across the heavens and earth, shaking the balance of all things. The waves did not calm. They rose again and again, lashing the beaches with relentless strength, stirred into motion by the divine presence and the chaos that followed in their wake. The whole world trembled with their passing, and from the deepest shadows below, even the ruler of the dead, lord of the underworld, felt the rumble in his dark kingdom and grew uneasy. Far beneath him, where the Titans lay hidden in the depths of Tartarus, bound and buried, those ancient powers stirred in alarm at the loud, terrible noise and the sound of fierce conflict above. Their sleep was broken, their silence disturbed by the dreadful strife that echoed through the layers of the world. And in the midst of all this, the final blow was struck, as the king of the gods, with thunder in his hands, faced the monstrous Typhoeus and hurled down upon him his lightning bolts, each one filled with fury and fire. Typhoeus, wounded and broken, was thrown down in ruin, his vast body shattered, and the very earth beneath him groaned beneath his weight as he fell. Flames burst from his body where the thunderbolt had struck, lighting up the rugged valleys and dark glens of the mountains with burning light. The air became thick with heat, and the rocks melted under the force of divine fire. The ground, once strong and unmoving, softened like metal in a furnace, like tin melting in channels carved by men, or like iron, so hard and strong, glowing red as it softens in the flames deep within the mountains. The earth melted as though it too could not bear the power of the fire, glowing with the anger of the sky and the strength of the gods. And in the full heat of his fury, the king of the heavens cast Typhoeus down into the depths of Tartarus, that wide and awful pit where light cannot reach, where the walls are made of bronze and night itself gathers in folds. There, in the cold, dark place, the monstrous one was buried, his rage quieted but not gone. For from Typhoeus still came the storm, the wild winds that shook the seas and brought trouble to mankind. From that deep pit poured the howling gales, rushing up into the world above, causing chaos and ruin. These were not the soft and helpful winds that blessed the earth, the south wind that brought warmth, the north wind that brought cool air, or the gentle west wind that carried good weather, but were instead the wild and unpredictable ones, stormy and violent, that tore across the ocean with no warning, These winds came with wet blasts and cruel fury, scattering ships and wrecking boats, tossing sailors into the waves and giving no hope of escape. No prayer could stop them, no offering could calm them, for they were born from the anger trapped in the pit, from the broken body of Typhoeus, cursed to bring torment to those on the sea. And these same winds swept over the wide fields of the earth, tearing through crops and throwing dust into the air, destroying the hard work of farmers and leaving behind ruin. The lands below groaned as the wild wind screamed above, making the world a place of uproar and confusion. And far away, in a time of old and a moment of stillness, the queen of the gods raised her hand and struck the ground flat with her palm. Her voice rose in a solemn prayer, calling upon the earth below and the sky above, and upon the Titan gods lived beneath the earth, those who had been cast down and buried in Tartarus, those from whom all gods and men had come. She called to them all, from the highest heavens to the deepest pit, asking them to hear her words, to witness her oath, to know her truth. And still, in that terrible place, the enemy of the gods lay trapped, Typhoeus, the one with 100 heads, locked away in dreadful Tartarus, bound by necessity with iron chains, unseen and unmoving, held down by the sheer weight of the pit, the pressure of the deep, invisible and endless, held him there, pressing always downward with a force that could not be resisted. That place, called steep by those who knew it, was not steep in the way of a mountain rising, but steep in its descent, in its depth, so deep that even the gods hated to look toward it. The same word that described the sky's rise was used for Tartarus's fall, for the two were mirrors, sky above and pit below, each endless in its reach. And in a distant voice, bound high in the mountains, the Titan who had once stolen fire for mankind cried out. He too knew the pain of punishment, chained to stone, wishing that he had been thrown instead into the darkness, into the pit below the earth, far from light and sight, far from sky and wind, wishing to trade one prison for another. For even he, suffering upon the mountainside, saw the dread of Tartarus as greater still. That pit, with its unseeable depth, its iron chains, and its everlasting night, stood not just as a place of punishment, but as a reminder to all, gods and mortals, that there were places in the world meant to contain powers too wild, too dangerous, too angry to ever be free again. And so it remains, silent and vast, a wound beneath the world, echoing always with the distant rumble of storms. Yes, beneath the realm of the underworld, far below where the dead find their rest and where Hades holds silent court, deeper still lies the place called Tartarus, a pit so far removed from the world above that no light can reach it and no soul can return. It was there, in that impassable darkness, that the ancient ones were hurled and bound in chains that no hand could break, chains fastened not by mercy, but by power that knew no forgiveness. The cavernous gloom of Tartarus, black and thick like the breath of night, swallowed up the old rulers, those who once stood high and proud, and now hides them far beneath the earth, where time does not move and the sky is only a memory. There in that abyss, Chronos, once mighty and bold, lies in silence with his kin, the great Titans, who fought and lost, their thrones taken, their voices stilled. One of them, broken but unbowed, cried out from his torment, wishing that he had been hurled into that black pit, where the swirling rivers of unbending fate flowed around the walls, where even pain seemed still, buried under the weight of stern necessity. And long before that, in the early shaping of things, when the sky itself had only just opened and the earth had begun to breathe, the one who ruled above all. Uranos had feared his children, those terrible and powerful beings, the ones with 100 hands, and the others with a single eye that shone like lightning, and so he cast them down. He threw the Hecatoncheires and the Cyclopes into the pit, locking them in the deepest part of Hades' realm, into a space as black as Erebus, where the distance from earth to sky was matched only by the drop into that dreadful gulf. There they remained, in chains and darkness, forgotten except by the earth itself, until war came and the great battle of the gods began. After 10 long years of endless battle, when no side seemed near to victory and the sky and earth trembled from the strain, the earth herself spoke a prophecy. She said that victory would come to the king of the gods, only if he released those ancient prisoners from their suffering and made them his allies. So the ruler of the skies descended, and with a thunderous blow he slew their jailer, the monstrous guardian named Campe, and broke the bonds of those once cast down. In return, the grateful Cyclopes gave him thunder and lightning, and the thunderbolt that would become his most feared weapon. To the god of the underworld, they gave a helmet that made him unseen, and to the god of the sea, a trident of great power. With these gifts, the three rose up and overcame the Titans, casting them down once more, but this time with chains meant to last forever. Into Tartarus they were flung, their cries unheard, their strength sealed behind the gates. And standing at those gates were their old allies, now turned jailers, the 100-handed giants, strong and unshakable, trusted to keep watch for all time. The pit of Tartarus became their tomb, a place of silence and gloom, locked away with no key, no opening, no end. But power does not always stay where it is placed, and rage does not sleep easily. One day, when the son of a great healer was struck down by the thunderbolt of the king, his father, burning with grief and wrath, took revenge by slaying those who had forged the bolt itself. The gods trembled then, for no one had dared touch the makers of divine fire, and the sky god, full of fury, prepared to cast the grieving god into Tartarus as punishment. But at the pleading of a gentle goddess, he showed restraint, sending him not into the pit, but into servitude instead. Yet the threat remained, a reminder that Tartarus waits for all who defy the rule of Olympus. Even the ancient queen of the world, long forgotten, was not spared. Once powerful and revered, she was overthrown by another who came with strength and cunning, and she too was cast into Tartarus, buried beneath the weight of the earth, her name remembered only in whispers. The old poets knew this place well, and they were the first to speak of the Titans as gods who had fallen, gods who now dwelled in Tartarus, far from the reach of sunlight, beyond the veil of the known world. One poet wrote that even below Tartarus, beyond the furthest shadow, there lay destruction, so deep and so far that even the dead would not go there. Another spoke of the Titans with reverence and fear, praying to them in song, asking them from their infernal thrones deep beneath the solid earth to let go of their rage, to hold back their fury from rising again. For though they were chained and buried, the power of the Titans was not gone. It remained, deep and silent, like fire beneath stone, like storm under calm sea, like a memory that waits to awaken. Tartarus was not merely a pit, not merely a prison. It was the place where power went when it was denied, where might was buried, where rebellion was locked away. It was where time did not flow and light could not pierce. And in its silence, there were voices, old voices, ancient and waiting, watching from behind walls of bronze and rivers of darkness, held not by force alone, but by the will of gods, who feared what would happen if the chains were ever broken. One of your kind may one day desire to enter the hidden places where few are welcome, but in ancient tales passed down through many voices, there were those who dared cross divine lines. Arc, born of Thaumas, shared her wings with her sister, the bright rainbow messenger, who remained faithful, while Arc chose a different path. When the great war between the gods and the old powers began, and the heavens trembled with the force of battle, Arc turned away from the camp of the gods and flew instead to stand beside the Titans, betraying those she had once served. When victory came to the new gods and the world changed beneath their feet, Zeus tore the wings from Arc's back, the mark of her betrayal stripped from her forever, and he cast her down into Tartarus, where the shadows lie heavy and time stands still. She fell into that deep pit, a place not of simple punishment, but of complete isolation, sealed away from the sky, where no color exists and no sound escapes the bronze gates that guard it. And it was not only she who felt the pull of the pit's terrible silence. Eris, the goddess of strife and discord, in her fury at being excluded from the marriage of Peleus and Thetis, longed to open those very gates and unleash the ancient ones who slumbered within the depths. She wanted to rouse the Titans from their prison, tear open the sky and bring ruin to the heights of heaven, where Zeus ruled in might. The darkness beneath was a place she saw not with fear, but as a key to chaos, and her hatred burned to set it free. Chronos, who once reigned over gods and swallowed his children in hopes of keeping his power, had already been thrown into Tartarus, defeated and buried beneath the earth, left in chains by thunder and fire. Even armed with storm and flood, he could not stand against the force of the lightning that struck him down. The pit became his home, sealed in gloom, where the echoes of the past never fade. It was within the embrace of the earth herself that he lay hidden, though he had once ruled the sky as the son of heaven. This prison, this place of endless fall and unshakable silence, was later known as the Dungeon of the Damned. For in time, Tartarus, once simply the cosmic abyss where defeated gods were thrown, became a place of judgment and punishment for mortals as well. Those who lived with cruelty, who acted without justice or piety, were sent after death not to rest among flowers and sunlight, but to the cold, dark floor of Tartarus, where the judges of the dead would send them to suffer. Some remained only for a time, to pay their due and rise again, but others stayed forever, their deeds too dark to be forgiven. Yet in the older stories, it was not so. In the songs of early poets, Tartarus was not yet a hell for men, but a vast space beneath the earth, a void for the broken powers that once shook the world. It was there that the Titans lay, and the spirits of the storms, the wild demons of wind and fury, each confined where no light could reach them. Only later, as the minds of philosophers and the pens of poets turned to deeper thoughts, did they shape this abyss into something new, into a place that contrasted with the bright meadows of the dead who had lived well. The paradise of Elysium stood in light and calm, while Tartarus remained forever in shadow and pain. The words of a philosopher, long after the age of Chronos, tell of the law that still held true among the gods, that those who lived in justice and holiness would find peace beyond death in the Isles of the Blessed, far from sorrow, while those who lived with evil in their hearts would be dragged to the dungeon of punishment, to the place men called Tartarus. In the age when Chronos ruled, and even now under the reign of Zeus, judgment was passed, though once those who judged were men still among the living, deciding the fate of the dying while still bound to the earth. And because of this, many decisions were wrong, For no living man can see all that must be seen, and many souls passed into the afterlife, either punished too harshly or rewarded in error. But the pit remained, unchanged, unyielding, deep beyond depth. It held those who defied the divine order, those who sided with the wrong force, and those who reached too far with cruel hands. It held gods, spirits, and men, in a silence not born of peace, but of complete severance from the world. Down in the heart of the world, beyond the reach of sun and moon, sealed by bronze and guarded by shadow, Tartarus did not forgive, did not forget, and did not release. It was not merely a space, but a sentence, a place not only of depth, but of finality, where even wings could not fly, and where the echoes of betrayal, ambition, and vengeance joined together in stillness that would never end. So Plauton, lord of the underworld, together with those who governed the Isles of the Blessed, went before Zeus to bring news of what they had witnessed among the dead. And they spoke of how souls were being wrongly placed, how some who had done evil in life were finding reward, and others who had lived well were sent to places of sorrow. They explained that many passed on to either realm without true justice, their fates not earned by their deeds, but decided by error. Upon hearing this, Zeus answered with resolve, saying that he would no longer allow such unfairness to go on. He spoke clearly, pointing out the cause of the injustice. It was because the dead were being judged while still alive. They stood trial with their bodies intact, still clothed in all the coverings of life. The wealth, the beauty, the noble lineage, and the power that made them seem greater or more righteous than they truly were. Many, he said, who had wicked souls wore fine appearances and were born to high houses and carried riches. When the time for judgment came, they brought with them witnesses who praised them, speaking of their honor, of their generosity, and of the image they had shown the world. But this was only a mask. These judges, who had to decide their fate, were confused not only by the lies spoken in favor of these souls, but also because they themselves were alive, still cloaked in flesh and senses, with eyes that saw only the outer form and ears that heard only the words of others. The soul, hidden beneath this covering, could not be seen as it truly was, and so the truth was buried, and judgment became corrupted. So Zeus said it must end. The first thing to be changed, he declared, was that humans should no longer know when they would die, for this knowledge allowed them to prepare false faces and seek favor before their end. He had already commanded Prometheus to take this knowledge away from them, and next, he ordered that all must be stripped of the body before they stood trial, that they must be judged not as the living but as the dead. Naked of all worldly things, their souls would stand alone, without family, without title, without riches or voice to protect them. And their judges too would be without bodies, dead and bare, so that they might see the soul for what it was, with no veil of flesh to mislead them. This, you said, was the only way for justice to be pure and final. Knowing what was needed, he appointed his own sons as judges, 2 from the land of Asia, Minos and Rhadamanthys, and 1 from Europe, Iacchos. When their mortal lives came to an end, they would not pass into rest, but instead would take their place as the ones who decided the fate of every soul. At the place where the path of the dead divides into 2 roads, one leading to the bright and peaceful Isles of the Blessed, and the other to the deep and shadowy pit of Tartarus, the 3 judges would sit. Those who came from the lands of Asia would be brought before Rhadamanthys, and those from Europe would be judged by Iacchos. If ever a case proved too difficult, or if the other 2 could not agree, then Minos would give the final word, for Zeus had given him the power to decide when all else remained uncertain. In this way, Zeus created a system where each soul would be seen as it truly was, judged not by what it wore or what others said, but by the very shape and state of the soul itself. When the dead arrived, they would be brought before the judge without name, without rank, unknown and unguarded. And Rhadamanthys would look upon them and examine the soul, not knowing if it belonged to a king or a servant. Often, when he gazed into the soul of one who in life had ruled great empires or sat on mighty thrones, he would find the soul broken, scarred by its own actions, marked by lies and betrayals. The soul would be covered in stripes, wounds from every false oath and every act of injustice it had committed. Where the soul should have been whole and clear, it was twisted and stained, each wound a memory of corruption. Some souls were marked by a life lived without honesty, shaped by deceit and fed by the praise of flatterers, raised in power but starved of truth. Others, consumed by pride and weakness, were filled with arrogance and selfish pleasure, their souls swollen and misshapen by indulgence and cruelty. These souls, no matter how fine they once appeared, were ugly and distorted, their true nature revealed at last, no longer hidden behind wealth or fame. And so, before the judges, each soul stood exposed, and the judgment passed not by voice or evidence, but by the sight of the soul itself. This was the justice Zeus had willed, a justice where all things were laid bare, and where the journey of each soul was decided not by what others believed, but by what the soul had truly become. From that point onward, no one could escape this fate, and none could deceive the judges, for all must pass through death and be seen as they are, walking not with titles or tokens, but with the truth of their own being laid open before the ones who judged. And from that meadow where the paths split, one to light and one to shadow, the fate of every soul was decided, and none could walk backward once the way had been chosen. Beholding the soul as it stands stripped of everything it once wore in life, its wealth, its title, its beauty, and its proud name, the judge sees clearly what lies beneath. If the soul is found to be unworthy, if it is corrupted by wickedness, falsehood, and violence, it is cast away in shame, dismissed not to rest, but to be locked in the place of punishment, the terrible custody where the fitting consequences are dealt. There, upon arrival, the soul must endure sufferings that are not given with cruelty, but with purpose. For punishment, rightly given, must either heal or serve as warning. If one can be made better, if one can be cleansed of wrong and brought back into balance, then the pain has meaning. The suffering becomes the path through which the soul may improve. And even if the punishment cannot help the punished directly, it becomes a sign for others. For some must be corrected, and others must learn by watching, by seeing the cost of evil and fearing that they too may fall if they do not change. Those who gain from punishment are those whose faults are not beyond fixing, whose misdeeds are not yet so deep that they cannot be washed away. But even for these, the cleansing is not gentle. It is hard. It is filled with pain. It brings tears and torment. Whether in life or in the world below, the process of becoming right again must pass through anguish, for only through pain can the weight of wrongdoing be broken. Yet there are others, those who have crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed, who have become so corrupted by their own acts that no light remains in them. These are the souls who are judged incurable. No punishment will ever change them, and no healing can reach them. These are not punished for their own good, but for the good of others. They are not corrected, but displayed, held up as a warning, a lesson to all who follow after. These are made to suffer the greatest torments, the sharpest wounds, the most dreadful horrors, not for their own redemption, but so others may see what awaits the truly wicked. They hang there in the infernal dungeon, not merely imprisoned but exhibited, a spectacle for the newly arrived to witness. These sights are meant to shake the hearts of those who still have a chance, to turn their steps away from the dark road before it is too late. And it is often the case that the worst offenders, those who end up as these eternal examples, come not from the poor or powerless, but from rulers, those who held authority, who commanded armies, who judged others while hiding their own rot. For it is those who possess the freedom to act without check who most often commit the gravest sins, with no one to stop them, with the power to act as they will. They let loose the full measure of pride, cruelty, and greed. The ancient poets knew this, and one in particular, whose voice still echoes through time, told of kings and princes who were the most wicked, the most guilty, and whose downfall was the greatest. And so when such a soul comes before the judge, Rhadamanthys, firm and unwavering, he does not ask for name, for birth, or for story. He sees only the truth that the soul reveals. He sees what it has done, how it has lived, what stains lie upon it. He sees the shape of its actions and the scars left behind by lies, cruelty, and power abused. And then he sends it away, first marking it with the sign that tells whether there is hope of healing or whether it is a soul beyond saving. Those marked as incurable are sent straight to Tartarus to suffer what they deserve. And this too is just, for it is not done with vengeance, but with the balance of the world in mind. And still more is said by those who have thought deeply of the soul and its journey. The soul, they say, is immortal, and therefore cannot flee from its wrongs simply by dying. It carries with it everything it has been shaped into, its learning, its habits, its ways of thinking, all that it has taken in and all that it has become. This, and this alone, follows the soul beyond the veil. Nothing of gold or fame or flesh crosses with it, only its true nature. That nature can lift it or drag it down. The better and wiser the soul has become in life, the safer its path beyond death. And each soul, upon the moment of departure, is met by its guide, the spirit appointed from birth to walk beside it unseen, now made visible in death. That guide, given by fate, leads the soul to the place where all the dead must gather, where judgment waits. Then, each is brought before those who decide, those who do not judge by what is spoken, but by what is seen within. And once the soul has been judged, once its path has been decided, it does not walk alone, but is led by another guide, one whose task it is to bring souls to their final dwelling, whether that place is of peace or punishment. And when the judgment is complete and the soul has been shown the truth of itself, there is no turning back. The journey begins with the soul alone, carrying nothing but what it has become, and it ends in the place it has earned. This is the law of the soul's journey, and it cannot be changed. No plea, no name, no tears can undo it. Only the truth remains. And in this way, justice in the realm beyond life is not like that of the world above. For here there is no mask, no wealth, no witness to shield the soul. There is only what the soul has made of itself, and what it must now face. Due and remained through the time appointed, the soul stays in the place it has earned, not forever in all cases, but for as long as it must, until the measure of time given by justice has been fulfilled. When that time has passed, another guide, often spoken of in the old stories as the one who brings joy and release, leads the soul back again, not to its former body, but into another life. For the soul is born once more into the world above. But this journey of the soul is not a simple one, not a single straight path, not a road that everyone walks in the same way. If it were so, there would be no need for guides, no need for spirits to show the way, for no one could miss the path if there were only one. But instead, the journey is twisted and full of choices, with many turns and hidden ways. This is not guessed but known through the rituals and sacred practices that mortals perform in life. Rites passed down in secret, which reflect the truth of what lies beyond. These rites tell of paths that fork, of roads that curve, of the many ways a soul might go, some leading to peace and others to pain. The soul that is calm, wise, and has lived with order listens to its guide and follows without fear. It knows what is happening. It understands its place, its time, and the steps ahead. But the soul that still clings to the world, that longs for the body it once knew, does not let go so easily. It stays close to the visible world, floating near the places it once called home, haunting the air, the ground, the light. It resists, it suffers, it delays, until finally it is taken by its guiding spirit, but not gently. That daemon, tasked with leading it away, must carry it by force, through struggle and confusion, until it reaches the gathering of souls. And when it gets there, if the soul is heavy with guilt, if it has done murder or crimes of equal darkness, if it has joined with other souls that walk the same cruel path, then the others turn from it. It is pushed away, left alone. No guide will stand with it. No soul will walk beside it. It wanders in that place, lost and confused, and it cannot find its way. This loneliness lasts for a time fixed by law, not short, not kind. And when that time is up, the soul does not choose where to go. It is taken by necessity, dragged to the place that fits its nature. That place is cold, dark, a dungeon below all others, and the forces that bring it there are those who don't forget. But the soul that has lived with justice, with purity, and with a gentle spirit, finds something else entirely. When it leaves the body, gods come to meet it. Its journey is smooth, its guide is kind, and the way leads to light. This soul enters the place meant for it, a home beyond sorrow, where it may dwell in rest. And below all of this, beneath the ground on which we walk, in the deep hollows of the earth, there are many hidden lands. Some lie deeper than the one where humans live, and some are even broader. Others are deeper still, but they open only in narrow places. Some are shallow yet wide, like vast caves stretching without end. These many hollows are joined together through secret passages. Within them run channels, large and small, like veins within the world. Through these passages, water flows, not still but rushing, mixing from one hollow to another, like wine poured from bowl to bowl. In these unseen depths are rivers that never run dry, rivers that flow with both heat and cold. Some carry fire, living fire that moves like a stream. Others flow with thick mud, sometimes smooth, sometimes rough, like the dark rivers that move before the lava bursts forth from the earth in fiery places such as those known in Sicily. The fire comes after, filling the cracks, burning its way through the paths of stone. And all these rivers and fires and streams of thick mud do not move without cause. There is a motion within the earth, an oscillation, a rhythm like breathing, which lifts and lowers all these hidden things. This great shaking is not felt above, but it moves everything within. One great chasm lies at the heart of it all, the largest of them all, a pit that cuts through the world itself. It stretches from the surface above to the deepest point below, crossing everything. This is the chasm spoken of by the poet when he told of the farthest and darkest abyss. It is this great hollow that draws all things downward, that pulls water, fire, and spirit into the depths. It is the mouth through which the world breathes in and out, through which the soul may fall if its weight demands it. For those who must go to the lowest of places, to the realm of punishment, it is this passage they are taken through. It leads to Tartarus, the pit beneath all pits, the final dwelling for those who cannot rise. Their journey through these hidden hollows is not known to the living, but the signs remain in myth and rite, in the whispered words of those who understand the old ways. And the soul, when it comes to this path, carries nothing with it but what it has become. It cannot wear anything it had in life. It cannot bring gold or name or family. It walks alone, led by the spirit that watched over it from birth, to face the truth of itself. And the earth in its silence opens, and the roads divide, and the soul, whether it seeks light or whether it flees from pain, must go forward. For no soul, not even the slowest or the most stubborn, can remain where it does not belong. And so the journey continues over and over, in silence and in law, until every soul finds its rightful place beneath the sky and within the depths of the earth. Beneath the earth, there lies a deep and terrible chasm, a hollow so vast that the poets of old called it Tartarus, and others followed, repeating the name in songs and tales. It is this abyss that receives all the rivers, for every stream, every flow of water upon the surface, eventually finds its way into this great pit, and from it they also rise again, moving in and out in a motion without rest. The rivers do not all look or behave the same, for each one takes on the nature of the land it travels through, becoming like the soil and stone beneath it. And the reason this constant motion happens is that the matter beneath has no true bottom, no firm foundation to hold it still. It swells and sinks, rising and falling without end, and with it the wind and air are pulled along, as if they too are caught in the breathing of the world. The wind follows the movement of the liquid, rushing forward when the waters move toward one side of the earth and pulling back when they flow toward the other. The motion is like breath itself, like lungs inhaling and exhaling, and this rhythm creates storms and blasts that are violent and unstoppable, fierce in their coming and just as strong in their retreat. When the waters retreat to the lower regions, those which mortals cannot see, they pour into the hidden rivers below the surface, filling them like wine-filling bowls, as if they were drawn in by an unseen hand. Then, when the waters leave that shadowy region and rise again, they pour out into the rivers above, filling them once more. And when these rivers are full, they move through the channels of the earth, flowing through mountains and valleys, through plains and forests, until they reach the places meant for them. There they become the seas, the wide marshes, the flowing rivers and fresh springs that people see and use every day. But their journey does not end there. Once their paths are completed on the surface, they begin again, sinking below the ground once more. Some pass through many great regions, circling wide territories before they descend again into the chasm, while others pass through fewer lands, taking a shorter way. But all return to Tartarus, all fall below the place from which they first rose. Some return to the same side from which they departed, while others flow into the opposite side. There are even rivers that wrap themselves around the world, once or more than once, like serpents coiling in the dark, until at last they reach the deepest point and fall again into the abyss. From both sides of the earth it is possible to descend toward the center of this chasm, but beyond the center no one may go, for at that point the ground begins to rise again. The slope climbs upward on both sides, and from there the streams must part, each returning in its own direction. Among the many rivers that move in this vast and hidden system, there are 4 that stand above the rest in power and scale. The greatest of these is the one called Okeanos, which surrounds everything in a great circle, flowing endlessly around the world. Opposite to this, flowing in a contrary direction, is the river Akera. This river winds its way through lonely deserts and uninhabited lands, passing below the earth until it arrives at the Akarusian lake. It is to this lake that most souls travel when they die. They come there after death, and they remain for the time that has been assigned to them. For some, this time is long, for others, short, but none may leave before their appointed moment arrives. And once that moment comes, they are sent again into the world, reborn into new lives, return to the surface to begin their journey once more. Between these two rivers flows the third, and it emerges not far from where both rivers meet. Near the place of its source, it falls into a vast region that burns with unending fire, a place where the ground itself boils. Here the river creates a lake larger than the great sea, known to men, a lake not of calm water but of seething heat, where mud and water churn together in torment. This lake bubbles constantly, smoke rising from its surface, and the sound of its boiling never ceases. From there, the river continues its path, filled with fire and fury. This lake, more immense than the Mediterranean, burns not with sunlight, but with flames born of the underworld, flames that touch the rivers and alter their course. The streams that pass through it do not emerge unchanged. They carry the fire with them, and with it, they bring change to the lands above and below. This burning region is not seen by any living eyes, but its breath can be felt in the smoke that escapes through cracks in the earth, and in the trembling of the ground when fire speaks from the depths. All these rivers, whether they are bright and cold or dark and hot, or heavy with mud, or blazing with flame, move through the veins of the earth, part of a system so old that no one remembers its beginning. They follow a rhythm older than time, a rhythm guided by the rise and fall of the unseen chasm, the great hollow that lies beneath all things. And always, no matter how far they wander, they return to that central place, to Tartarus, which waits silently to receive them. There they begin again, caught in the endless flow of the earth's breath, moving in circles that never end, carving paths in the stone and soul of the world, forever hidden, forever deep. Flows in a circle, turbid and muddy, moving slowly through the dark corridors of the underworld, and along its winding and tangled course, it reaches many strange and hidden places until it finally comes near the edge of the Akarusian lake. Yet even when it draws so close, it does not mix with the waters of that lake. Instead, it continues on its way, curling again and again through the earth's hidden veins, making many turns beneath the surface until it descends further still, to a lower level where it pours itself into the deep pit of Tartarus. This river is known as Periflegathon, the river of fire, and the streams of molten lava that erupt from the earth in different places upon the surface are nothing more than branches and offshoots of this terrible river, reminders above ground of the heat that burns below. Opposite to this, across from Periflegathon, flows another river, the fourth in the underworld, and it emerges not gently but suddenly, pouring first into a wild, dreadful region that strikes fear into any who see it. The whole place is colored deep blue, like the precious stone called lapis lazuli, and the air is heavy and strange. This place takes its name from the river that shapes it, the Stygian river, called the Styx. The waters of the Styx do not behave like normal waters. They carry with them something dreadful, something binding and inviolable. As the river pours itself into the lake that shares its name, it takes on the power to break oaths, to seal fates, to mark the borders between life and punishment. Then the river flows beneath the earth again, circling round and round, but not in the same direction as the river of fire. It moves in opposition to Periflegathon until the two rivers come close once more, meeting from opposite sides at the Acherusian lake. But even there, neither of them mingles with the lake's water. Instead, they pass alongside, each keeping to its own path, and both flow back down into Tartarus, falling once again into the depths, one side by Periflegathon and the other by Styx. And with them flows another stream, called Kokitos, the river of lamentation. This river too circles in a loop, its waters filled with sorrow, its sound like endless weeping, and it too finds its way to Tartarus. Such is the nature of the rivers that run below the earth, their courses never-ending, their waters eternal, their purpose clear, to separate, to carry, to punish, and to cleanse. Now when the soul leaves the body and crosses into death, it does not wander blindly. Each soul is guided, taken by its own daimon, the spirit assigned to it since birth, a silent companion through life, and now a guide beyond it. The soul is led to the place where judgment takes place, and there it stands before those who judge not the body, not wealth or status, but only the deeds done while alive. If the soul is found to have lived with balance, neither too pure nor too wicked, it is taken to the Acheron. There boats wait upon the shore, vessels built not by mortal hands, but always ready to carry the dead. The soul is placed aboard, and the boat glides over the surface of the lake, smooth and quiet, until it reaches the far side. There the soul dwells for a time, purified by the calm waters and by the forces that rule this place. If the soul has done wrong, it pays what is due. If it has done good, it is rewarded in kind. No soul escapes this balance. What was done in life is answered in death. But for some, the story is not so simple. There are souls whose wrongdoings are too many, too dark, too deep to be mended. These are the incurable souls, those who committed crimes against the sacred, who spilled innocent blood with no remorse, who acted with cruelty beyond redemption. These souls are taken by fate itself, not allowed to plead, not allowed to delay. They are hurled into Tartarus, where they are locked away forever, never to return, never to see light again. But there are others still who have done great wrongs, but whose hearts turned later to repentance. These are the curable, though their path is still harsh. A man who once struck his father or mother in anger, or one who killed another in a moment of passion, if he regretted his act, if he lived with sorrow and remorse, then his soul is not lost, but it must suffer first. These souls too are cast into Tartarus, not forever, but for a time. For a year they remain in darkness, punished and weighed down by the weight of what they have done. And then the river waves stir. The waters of the underworld begin to move. The soul of the murderer is cast back by Kokitos, carried by the river of tears. The soul of the one who harmed a parent is pushed back by Periflegathon, lifted by fire. These waves do not move by mercy, but by law. They carry the souls upward, lifting them from the pit. When these souls rise again, they are brought to the edge of the Acherusian lake. There they do not cross silently. They cry out, they shout, they call upon those they wronged. Their voices echo across the waters, begging the ones they hurt for permission to return to life, pleading for pardon, seeking peace. If the ones they wronged forgive them, if the answer comes, then the soul may leave the lake, purified and ready for rebirth. But if forgiveness does not come, if no reply is given, then the soul is carried back again, down into Tartarus, to wait another year in darkness before it may rise and try again. Such is the cycle of justice among the dead, not swift, not easy, but always exact. Every soul is weighed, every act remembered, nothing is forgotten. The rivers carry more than water. They carry memory, sorrow, punishment, and the hope of release. And beneath it all, Tartarus waits, deep and silent, holding the weight of every soul not yet forgiven, whom they have slain or outraged, begging and pleading with cries that echo over the still waters. They call upon those they have harmed, asking with deep sorrow and trembling voices to be shown mercy, to be allowed to step out from the lake and find rest. And if their pleas are heard, if the ones they wronged grant them forgiveness, then they are lifted from their suffering, released from the grip of pain, and they step out of the waters, no longer bound by torment. Their punishment ends, and their soul is given peace. But if forgiveness is not given, if the one who was hurt remains silent or turns away, then the soul is taken once more by the waters. It is pulled back into the rivers, dragged once again through the winding dark paths of the underworld, and cast down again into Tartarus. From there, the cycle begins again, and the soul must rise once more to the lake, must plead again, must wait again, until at last forgiveness is given. This is the judgment set by the judges of the dead, and it cannot be rushed or escaped. It is the slow justice that waits in the shadows and weighs all things in time. And in another telling, in a place of shadows and strange laughter, a voice cries out in warning from the mouth of the underworld. There, the keeper of the gates of the dead, the stern figure who stands at the threshold of Hades, speaks of what lies beyond the gates. He threatens the one who dares step wrongly, saying that even the dark stone of Styx and the cruel rocks of Acheron, soaked in the blood of souls, can hold fast any who enter in deceit. Around them circle the hounds of Kokitos, always searching, never resting, and nearby slithers the 100-headed beast, a serpent so great it could tear open even the spirit. In this place, lungs are burned, entrails torn, and the organs of the body suffer punishment unending, as strange beasts of the deep rip and devour. Yet not all who pass into the realm of the dead find pain, for one soul speaks from beyond, and it is not from Tartarus that he speaks. He speaks not with cries, but with calm. The shade of a father appears to his son, calling him to come below, not in fear, but in love, to find him not in torment, but in the green fields of Elysium, where the blessed walk among each other. He says that the dark pit holds him not, that impious Tartarus with its cold gloom is not his dwelling, for he has been judged worthy and now walks in a gentler land. But the path to find him is not easy. It begins in Avernus, and beneath the earth it splits. There is a fork where every soul must choose, or rather where the choice is made for them. One path leads to the right, the road to Elysium, quiet and shining, passing under the high walls of the city of the dead, and beyond it is rest. But the other road turns left, and it is the path that descends into the fury of Tartarus. There the ground shakes and roars, and from beneath the cliffs one can see the castle of the damned. Its walls are 3 times encircled, and fire flows like a river around it. This is Phlegethon, the river of fire bursting with flames, rolling stones along its fiery bed. It thunders through the underworld, making the rocks tremble. The gate of this terrible place is no simple gate, but one made of iron, high and terrible, fixed in the earth with pillars of adamant, harder than any metal known to man or God. No force can break it, no army can breach it, not even the children of heaven. Above it rises a tower of iron, reaching into the dark sky, and there, at the gate, sits a figure dressed in blood, a watcher who does not sleep. This is the one who sees all torment, who listens for escape, who guards the door both day and night. Within, the sounds never cease. There are cries, not of mourning, but of agony. The lashes snap through the air. Iron drags along stone. Chains scrape as they are pulled. The condemned scream, but no help comes. The one who walks here, the one who sees this, cannot look away. Even the brave tremble, and one who came to this place asked what these cries meant, asked what the crimes were that brought such punishment, asked why the wind was filled with such wailing, and the guide, who had been taught the secrets of the gods, answered. She said that no soul, pure or clean, could step beyond this threshold. Only those given to darkness came this way. She had been placed here by a goddess and had learned the punishments that the gods had made. Within, the judge holds court, not a king of gold or joy, but one of iron and law. He listens not to excuses, but to the truth. He does not judge by words alone, but by what the soul confesses. And those who thought their crimes were hidden in life find they are known here. Nothing is hidden in the underworld. The soul speaks without choice, without delay. And when guilt is known, punishment comes. No plea is heard. The gates do not open. The fire does not dim. The river does not stop. This is Tartarus, the place where justice burns forever. Man, rejoicing in vain deceit, believing himself clever in delaying the price of his wickedness, put off atonement until the very moment of death, thinking that he could escape judgment by avoiding it in life. But no soul escapes what has been set by law. No sooner has he crossed the threshold of life into death than vengeance descends. Tisiphone, the avenger, wrapped in her robe soaked with blood, holding in one hand her whip, and in the other the writhing snakes of her fury, leaps upon the guilty without hesitation. Her snakes hiss, her eyes burn, and her cry summons her sisters, each one more relentless than the last. Together they rise and gather at the gate, and when the time comes, the great door to the realm below opens, not silently, but with a grinding of stone and the roar of rusted iron. The hinges shriek, cold and harsh, as the gates of Tartarus swing wide. And there, seated in shadow, is the sentry of the doorway, not a mortal figure, but a shape of nightmare, a guardian of horror. This is not one beast, but many, a monstrous hydra with 50 black throats, each one gaping wide, each one reeking of poison and death, each ready to tear flesh from soul. And past her, deeper still, the pit opens without end. It falls not like a well, but stretches sheer down into the dark, deeper than sky is high, deeper than the eye can grasp, twice the height of the heavens above, reaching far beyond all hope. Here, buried in the lowest pit, lie the ancient sons of the earth, the children of the old chaos, the Titans. They were hurled down by the thunderbolt when they rose against the sky. And now they rise still, broken and silent, their strength bound beneath rock and shadow. Not far from them are the twin giants, sons of arrogance, who once reached out with their hands to tear down the sky itself, hoping to unseat the ruler of heaven. They too were cast down, not in silence, but in ruin, their size now useless, their ambition chained to the abyss. And nearby, in the same torment, lies another, Salmoneus, whose madness led him to mimic the storm. Riding with firebrand in hand, pulled by 4 great horses, he dared to act the god, pretending to wield thunder and summon lightning. He rode through his people in his proud city, demanding worship, cloaking his torch in brazen thunder, the sound of hooves and metal echoing like full storm. But no mortal fire can mimic divine wrath. From thick clouds, real and rolling, came the true thunderbolt. It struck not like torchlight, but like the anger of the sky itself, and in an instant he was torn from life and hurled downward by a whirlwind that left no trace of glory. Far below, another punishment is seen. Tityos, stretched out over 9 full acres of land, his massive body unmovable, a reminder of the crime that chained him there. His liver, a source of constant pain, is torn day after day by a great vulture. The bird digs with his crooked beak, gorging on flesh that never ends, for no matter how much it eats, the wound heals again. His agony is endless, and there is no sleep, no peace, no moment of rest. And what of those who lived with violence and betrayal? The Lapiths, known for their chaos and lust, and Ixion, who turned against the gods, and Pirithous, who trespassed in places forbidden. They too are trapped. Their seats at golden banquets nothing but mockery. Rich couches surround tables set with food and splendor, and yet they cannot taste, cannot reach, cannot touch. For beside them waits the eldest fury, torch in hand, face stern, voice loud. She bars their hands from the feast, punishing them with eternal hunger, a hunger for what they may never have. Around them are many more, and these are not strangers, not monsters, but people who once walked in daylight. Some hated their own blood, turned brother against brother, or raised a hand against a parent. Some betrayed those who trusted them, drawing the innocent into schemes. Others kept their wealth close, refusing to share even a drop with family, hoarding their gold until death dragged it from their grasp. Many, the largest number of all, lie here for betrayal, for adultery, for treason, for cowardice, for turning their backs on oaths and lords. All of them are now walled in, sealed in stone and shadow, waiting for judgment or already enduring it. No visitor is advised to ask too much. Do not ask what each one did or how long their sentence lasts, for some stories are too dark and some crimes too painful to speak. But punishment is not quiet. Some roll great stones up impossible slopes, only to have them fall again. Others are stretched out on wheels that spin without rest. Theseus, once mighty, sits still and will sit forever, caught in a moment he cannot escape. And Phlegyas, whose rage once burned bright, now cries out not in fury, but in warning, shouting to any who pass near him in the gloom, calling out not for help but to teach. Be warned, he cries. Learn to be just. Do not forget the gods. His voice rises through the darkness, carried on the wind that moves through the halls of the damned. It echoes, not to save himself, but to reach others before it is too late. In this place, justice is not a moment. It is a wait, a silence, a cry, a punishment that endures, and it reaches deep, touching not only the body but the soul. Here all things are stripped bare, and here the truth remains, even when memory fades. One sold his country for gold, betraying his people for coins that would not warm him in death, and with that silver he chained his homeland beneath the hand of a tyrant. Another twisted the laws, making and unmaking them as he pleased, not for justice, but for bribes. A father forced his daughter into a marriage forbidden by all decency, turning love into suffering and kinship into shame. All these souls dared what should never have been dared, and they did not fail. They reached the heights of their wickedness. They achieved what they set out to do. But those victories turned to dust when they met judgment. And yet the list does not end there, for these are but a few. The number of crimes is beyond counting, and the forms they take are endless. If one had 100 tongues, 100 mouths to speak with, and a voice made of iron that would not tire or fade, still it would not be enough to name every crime, to tell every act of treachery and cruelty, or to describe each punishment laid upon those who acted with evil. The torments are just as many as the crimes, and they stretch through the darkness like echoes that never stop. So deep are these places, and so heavy the silence that surrounds them, it is no wonder that even the gods use Tartarus as a threat. Once, in ancient tale, a god of the sun warned a thief, though still an infant, that if his crimes continued, he would be cast not into the daylight, but into dusky Tartarus, a place of hopeless darkness, far from both mother and father, far from any light. There he will wander forever under the earth, not even as a soul among equals, but as the leader of lost and lonely spirits, the little folk who roam the shadows without comfort. Tartarus is not merely a place, but a judgment, a fall, a silence that does not answer back. And others have feared it too. One voice, an old voice, wept often in fear of Tartarus, wept not because he had reached it, but because he knew he must one day face it. For the way down into Hades is hard, and the descent brings with it grief. And it is certain as death, that no one returns once they pass below. The path only goes one way, and the door does not open again. It is grim, not because of what is seen, but because of what cannot be undone. The poets and storytellers spoke of this place often, and they gave it many names. One far-off river, deep in the west, was known by sound and story alone. Its name was Tartessos, and it was said to lie where the sun fell into the ocean. There the sun's bright light disappeared, and black night rose to cover the earth. And night, that old shadow, has always been tied to the underworld, to the place where souls go and do not come back. And just as Hades is a name for that shadowed place, so too is Tartarus. One thinker said that perhaps the name of Tartarus came from Tartessos, only with a twist of letters, a trick of sound passed down through the mouths of poets. And if that is true, then it means the edge of the world, the place farthest from all things, became the symbol of the lowest part of existence. For Tartarus is not merely a region within Hades, it is the deepest of them all, the place where punishment is not only felt, but seen. It is a hole beneath all holes, where the sky is not visible, and even the stars do not shine. It is where those who have defied the order of the world are placed, not for a short time, but forever. The Latin poets, those who followed after the Greeks, often spoke of Hades and Tartarus as if they were one, for in their hearts the two places shared the same breath. The shadows of Hades and the depth of Tartarus were not separate in feeling, only in purpose. Hades was where the dead waited, but Tartarus was where the wicked were judged and chained. And though many souls passed into Hades, only the worst, the most daring in their sin, the ones who would not bend, were thrown down into the very bottom, where the blackness was so thick it could be touched. In that place, no cries are heard, not because they are not screamed, but because no one dares to answer. There, justice is not spoken, it is lived. The rock, the wheel, the fire, the chains, these are not symbols but truths. There, even gods remember their fear. And so the stories continued, each one adding to the weight of the place, each voice whispering again and again that no one escapes what waits beneath the world. Tartarus remains unmoved, unbroken, untouched by time. Its gates still creak, its rivers still boil, its serpents still watch. It is the place beyond the fall, the ending that never ends. And all who have lived unjustly, who have wronged the sacred order, must pass its name in fear, for the depth of its silence speaks louder than any thunder. Souls, though once broken by war and loss, now walked in meadows without pain, where the breeze was soft and the skies forever clear. Their stories, once full of blood and tears, had found their endings in a land where nothing ever hurt again. And so, Elysium stood in the imagination of the Greeks, sometimes above the sea, sometimes beneath the world, sometimes divided, sometimes united, but always the same in purpose. A place where the noble dead could find peace, where the suffering of life was ended, and where the greatest stories came to rest not in sorrow, but in eternal light. Achilles, the great hero of the Trojan War, was one of the souls believed to be taken to Elysium after his death, a reward for his unmatched courage and glory on the battlefield, and alongside him were others closely tied to his life and legend, such as Penelope, the faithful wife of Odysseus, whose long years of waiting and steadfastness were honored with her place among the virtuous dead, as well as her sons, Telegonos and Telemachus, both born of the famed Odysseus and connected to the line of heroes. Among the Elysian-born, Euphorion stood out, a son of Achilles himself, said to have been born not in the world of men, but within Elysium itself, a child shaped by the light and peace of the blessed land. This list, though known in the records of poets and myth-tellers, was never complete, for in truth, any hero who had a cult dedicated to their name in ancient Greece was believed to have been carried to Elysium, a realm not just of a few, but of all those whose deeds inspired worship and remembrance. In the Odyssey, the ancient poet told how Menelaus, king of Sparta, was promised not death in his homeland, but instead a divine journey, for he would not meet a mortal end in Argos, but be carried by the immortals to the ends of the world, to the shining Elysian fields, where golden-haired Rhadamanthys ruled in peace. This realm was one of everlasting calm, where men no longer struggled under heavy labor, where there was no snow, no storms, no violent winds, only soft singing breezes that came from the west, sent again and again by the great river Oceanus to refresh those who lived there. This gift was not random, but given in honor of Menelaus' marriage to Hellene, whose father was Zeus himself, showing that the gods remembered their own and rewarded them with paradise. In another passage of the Odyssey, the story tells of the shades of the dead, the ghosts who wandered together through the dark lands of the underworld, led by Hermes, the guide of souls, who brought them through the misty and shadowy places, past the deep streams of Oceanus, beyond the gleaming white rock, through the great gates of the sun, and over the fields of dreams, until they reached the plain of Asphodel, where the shades of the dead made their home, a quieter, more neutral place, compared to the blessed peace of Elysium. In the Works and Days, another ancient poet, Hesiod, spoke of the generations of mankind, and of one noble and divine generation that came before the people of his own time, a race of heroic men who lived like gods, called the demigods, or half-divine beings. They were not immortal, and many were lost in war, some in the battles around Thebes when they fought over the herds of Oedipus, and others who sailed over the wide seas to Troy, drawn there for the sake of Helene's beauty. Yet not all perished, for some were granted a different fate. Zeus, the father of gods and men, gave them a place of peace, far from mortals, and set them to dwell at the farthest edges of the earth, on the islands of the blessed, by the deep and curling waters of Oceanus. These were happy spirits, living without sorrow. For them, the earth gave its sweet fruit, not once but 3 times a year, and they lived far from the eyes of the gods, ruled by Chronos, whom Zeus had freed from his ancient chains. These heroes were given great honor and eternal glory, dwelling in a place where time no longer held them and where the past could not reach. In another ancient fragment by Arctinus of Miletus, it was told how after the fall of Achilles, his body was honored by his comrades and placed upon a funeral pyre, while his mother, the sea goddess Thetis, mourned him with great sorrow. But she did not leave him to burn into ash and dust. She swept down and carried him away from the flames, bringing him to the White Island, that pure and shining land believed to be a form of Elysium itself, where he would live forever among other great heroes, untouched by death. In this vision of the afterlife, the White Island stood as a place of shining peace, one with the islands of the blessed, one with the Elysian fields, a realm beyond the reach of normal death, where the worthy dead walked beneath a sun that never burned, across fields that never withered, in lands where fruit never failed and time held no power. These places were not the same as the dark halls of the common underworld, where ghosts wandered among shadows, but were instead set apart, set above or beyond, places of reward, not punishment, where the deeds of life found their final meaning. Even the ancient poets who tried to map the way of souls, like those who spoke of the White Rock, the gates of the sun, and the dreams that lay beyond, knew that these were not roads of stone and soil, but paths of the spirit, ways walked by memory and myth. Elysium, whether called the Islands of the Blessed or the White Island, whether ruled by Chronos or Rhadamanthys, was always imagined as a land apart, one born not of fear but of peace, where the heroes of old and the righteous dead were gathered together, rewarded not for their prayers or offerings, but for the strength of their deeds and the depth of their lives. They lived without winter, without hunger, without sadness, in a world filled only with joy, light, and the soft singing of winds sent from the western sea. This was the fate kept for the greatest of them, a life after life, not empty and forgotten, but full and honored, eternal in its calm. Telegonos, the son of Circe and Odysseus, after unknowingly killing his own father in a tragic mistake, felt the weight of that sorrow and chose to carry his father's body back to the island of his mother, Arde. He brought with him not just the body of Odysseus, but also Penelope and Telemachus, the wife and son of the fallen hero, and together they crossed the sea to that quiet and enchanted land. There, on the island of Circe, in a place touched by divine power and hidden from the noise of the world, something rare and final happened. Circe, using her divine gifts, made them immortal, lifting them beyond the reach of death, and through this transformation, they were believed to be taken into Elysium. Telegonos was united with Penelope in marriage, and Telemachus was joined with Circe herself, and thus the family, once torn by fate, was bound together in peace. In another song of the old world, the poet told how in the end, all souls face judgment beneath the earth. There, those who lived without mercy are judged by the one who sits in darkness and declares punishment for sin. This judge, whether Minos or Rhadamanthys, speaks the sentence of justice, and the guilty are sent into suffering to pay for the wrongs of their lives. But not all souls are condemned. The good, those who lived with truth in their hearts, walk under the same sun as they once did, only now in a place where time does not harm and labor does not weigh. These are the souls that rest, never needing to till the earth or sail the rough sea for survival, never again touched by sorrow. They are among the honored of heaven, those who kept their oaths and chose virtue over ease. Their reward is a life without tears, a life where the days and nights pass in peace, where pain no longer reaches and the body knows no burden. yet there is a greater path still, one for those who through 3 lives stay just and clean in heart. These rare souls who remain righteous not once, but again and again through rebirth, are sent along the sacred road of Zeus toward the tower of Chronos, where the winds of Oceanus dance around the islands of the blessed. In that shining place, golden blossoms burn bright, growing both from the waters and the land, blooming on tall trees and fragrant fields. The air is filled with peace, and in their hands the blessed souls wear woven wreaths and flowered crowns, honors granted by the will of Rhadamanthys, who sits at the right hand of Chronos, the ruler freed from his bonds by the will of Zeus. This land is not open to all, only to those who have passed their tests again and again, who have never fallen from the path of virtue. Here are gathered the greatest souls, heroes like Peleus and Cadmos, who were raised into that realm of eternal calm. And when the prayers of his mother touched the heart of Zeus, even Achilles was brought there, he who had brought down Hector, the great defender of Troy, and who had slain the pale warrior Cycnos and Memnon, the son of the dawn. These were not stories of punishment or fear, but of glory remembered and honored beyond death. Yet not all who die remain in the quiet places below. The queen of the underworld, Persephone, does not forget the balance of fate. Those whose lives carried sorrow or wrong, even those not judged wicked, are returned to life by the hand. In the 9th year, their souls rise once more into the sunlight, reborn into the world of men. From these souls, who have carried their weight through shadow and returned to light, come kings of power, heroes of strength, and sages of unmatched wisdom. These souls are called sainted, remembered forever, not only for what they did, but for what they endured. But only after these souls pass through the world 3 times, each life tested and watched, can they be freed from the cycle. And once they are found pure in each life, then, and only then, are they finally lifted beyond the world, beyond even rebirth, and granted rest in the far-off lands of the blessed. There, in the light of golden trees and beneath winds that never grow cold, the soul finds peace. It is a journey not of one life but of many, and only those who walk it with courage, patience, and honor are welcomed into that final dawn. For some, like those who were made immortal by the will of Circe, the path may come suddenly in a single turn of fate. For others, it is a long road, carved across centuries of struggle and choice. But for all, Elysium is not a place given by chance, but one earned through the depth of the heart and the truth of the soul. And so, across the myths, the legends, and the fragments left behind by poets and singers, the vision of Elysium shines as a land beyond sorrow, a reward not only for the strong, but for the just, a paradise not only of stillness but of honor, where time forgets pain, and where the spirit, at last, is free. The islands of the blessed, found in the far streams of the river Oceanos, were known as the final resting place of the greatest souls, those who had been chosen by the gods or earned their reward through noble lives or glorious deeds, a paradise set apart from the dark shadows of the common underworld. Among those who reached this land was Rhadamanthys, the son of Europa, who was free from death and not sent there after his end, but rather transferred while still living. And though he continued to exist, his mother could no longer see him with her eyes, for he had passed into a divine place where mortals could not follow. Cadmos, one of the early kings and founders, and Harmonia, his companion, were also counted among the blessed, for Ares was fated to bring an end to their long sufferings and grant them immortal life. They were changed into serpents, not as a curse, but as a divine transformation, and sent to dwell forever in the islands of the blessed, joining the company of those who had passed beyond death. Zeus himself, in his divine will, sent them to the Elysium field, choosing to place them among the purest souls. Another figure tied to this realm was Lycos, the son of Poseidon and Calliope, Ino, who was settled by the sea god in the islands of the blessed, and his presence there was not by accident, but by the deliberate act of a god who gave him that eternal peace. When Achilles fell in battle, struck down at the end of the Trojan War, the Greek army mourned deeply, and his death cast a heavy silence over them. They buried him on the White Island, alongside his closest companion Patroclus, and their bones were mixed together, symbolizing their unbroken bond. But even that was not the end, for it was said that Archelaus went on to live with Medea in the islands of the blessed, joined with her not in battle, but in peace, far from the fields of war. Menelaus too, after returning to Sparta and regaining his kingdom, was made immortal by Hera and sent with Helen to the Elysian fields, where they could live together forever, not as rulers of men, but as souls honored by the gods. When Telegonos had learned from Circe that he was the son of Odysseus, he set out on a journey across the sea in search of his father, and after finding him and realizing the truth, he took the lifeless body of Odysseus and brought it, along with Penelope, back to the island of Circe. There he married Penelope, and Circe, using her divine powers, sent both of them to the islands of the blessed, where their story did not end in grief but in eternal life. Even Thetis, the mother of Achilles, was told by Hera that her son would one day come to the Elysian plain, and that it was fated he would be joined in that place with Medea, the daughter of Aeetes, not through the trials of war, but in a union beyond the world of men. Hector, the great defender of Troy, was also said to dwell in the islands of the blessed, a mighty hero who had stood against plague and destruction. His bones, long after the war, were believed to hold power, and the people of Thebes, struck by a plague, turned to the oracles and were told to bring the bones of Hector from Troy and place them in the sacred tower of Kalydnos, which stood upon the Acropolis of Thebes. This place, called Makaron Nessos, or Island of the Blessed, within the city, was believed to be a temple-filled height, a holy place that mirrored the paradise of the distant western islands, and by placing Hector's remains there they hoped to bring protection and healing to their land. So the names of the blessed were remembered, and their stories passed down, not just as tales of old battles or lost loves, but as the journeys of souls who had crossed the line between mortal life and divine rest, and who now walked in a land where sorrow was no more, where the breeze from Oceanus brought calm, and where golden light fell gently on eternal fields. The islands of the blessed were not just a reward but a promise, a place where the pain of life gave way to joy without end, and where the greatest of heroes were not forgotten but honored forever, their strength and suffering transformed into peace, their names echoing softly in the land beyond the river's edge, where death had no power and time held no rule. 7 generations after the great flood of Deucalion, when the world was still young and recovering from the chaos that once engulfed it, there came a man named Macareus, a descendant of Deucalion, who arrived at the island of Lesbos. As he stepped upon its soil, he saw how beautiful and rich the land was, filled with green fields, fresh water, and gentle hills that welcomed the sun with warmth. Seeing its potential and its peace, he made it his home, anchoring his lineage in the heart of the island. But Macarius was not content with ruling over just one island. He sought to bring under his rule the nearby lands that lay scattered in the surrounding seas. First, he looked to Chios, which stood proud in the waves with its forests and soft breezes. He sent out a colony to settle there, expanding his reach and laying the foundation for what would become a chain of thriving islands. After Chios, he turned his gaze to Samos and sent another colony to plant their roots there. The people flourished as the lands yielded fruits and grains, and life grew easy in the warmth of the sun. The third island to receive his touch was Kos, where again his people settled and built homes, temples, and farms. The cycle of abundance continued, and Kos too thrived under the guidance of Macarius. Finally, he dispatched Leucippus, a trusted leader, along with a large group of colonists to Rhodes, which lay far out but promised equal fortune. These islands, exposed to soft breezes and blessed with clean, wholesome air, became havens for human life. The soil was rich, the harvest plentiful, and the weather gentle. People lived with ease, building their lives without fear of famine or storm. Their happiness and comfort grew so much that others began to look upon them with envy. Over time, these islands came to be known as the Islands of the Blessed, not only because of the goodness of the land, but also because some said they were named in honor of Macarius, whose sons ruled them after him. These places stood out from all others, enjoying a fortune that surpassed all their neighbors. Even in later times, long after Macarius was gone, these islands were still known for their richness in soil, their perfect location, and their climate that never turned harsh. In every age, they were rightly called blessed, for they truly were, yet not all agreed on their origin. Strabo, the geographer, looked at the tales told by the poets and tried to explain them in simpler terms. He believed that the stories of the Elysian fields and the islands of the blessed were not dreams or distant myths, but were inspired by real lands, perhaps by the far western parts of Iberia, the land we now call Spain. The poets, like Homer, heard stories of great journeys to these far edges of the world, where Phoenician sailors brought back word of rich lands beyond the sea. Tales of gold and silver, of soft breezes and kind weather, of lands where life was easier than anywhere else. Inspired by such reports, Homer imagined that the blessed souls would go there after death, far from the cold and pain of the mortal world. There, he wrote, lived Rhadamanthus, the wise and just, and there the gods would guide souls like Menelaus, giving them peace for all eternity. In these lands there was no snow, no storm, and no rain. Only the ever-blowing west wind sent by Oceanus himself, which kept the air clear and mild. The poet's dream was a reflection of what he had heard, shaped into a vision of paradise. And so, through both history and poetry, these islands came to life in the minds of the people. Some saw them as real places shaped by the work of kings, others as the home of immortal souls after their journey through life. But all agreed that these places were unlike any other, full of gentle light, endless food, and soft winds that whispered of peace. They were the reward for the greatest, a place where heroes and rulers who had done mighty things would live forever, far from war and pain. A land without winter, without fear, without the passing of time, where everything was always just right. The vision of the Islands of the Blessed, whether it rose from the deeds of Macarius or the poetry of Homer, whether it lay in the Aegean Sea or the western edge of the world, captured the hope that somewhere beyond this life there was a place where peace never ended and joy had no limit. It was this hope, this picture of paradise, that stayed with the people through generations, shaped by kings and travelers, by storytellers and sailors, growing richer with every telling. Rhadamanthys was already in the Elysian plain, the place where heroes go when their lives on earth have ended and the gods choose to reward them. This land, described as being at the ends of the earth where no snow falls, where no storms rage, and where there is no rain, was known for its soft, eternal breezes that came from the west wind, Zephyros. It was believed to be warm and gentle, filled with light, and far from the pain and labor of mortal life. Homer placed it near the edges of the known world, beyond the reach of daily suffering, in a place where the gods sent special souls who had earned a peaceful reward. This realm was ruled in part by Rhadamanthys, who held a golden staff and served as judge among the dead, ensuring justice even in the afterlife. He stood near Minos, the other great judge of souls, who was also a son of Zeus. Later, poets followed Homer's idea, repeating the tale of this paradise and naming it the Islands of the Blessed, even pointing out actual locations off the coast near southern Iberia, not far from what is now called Gades. These were places that were known for their soft air and rich lands, and the poets believed they matched the paradise of the myths. The myths continued to grow as travelers and storytellers connected the legendary places with real lands they had seen or heard about, like the fertile lands near the mouth of the Danube River. There, an island called the White Island was said to be sacred to Achilles. It was covered in woods and filled with both tame and wild animals. A temple to Achilles stood on it, and within the temple there was an image of him. The people of Crotona and those of Hemera told of a man named Leonymos who once sailed to this island. In a war with their neighbors, the Locrians, Leonymos was wounded during battle, and in his pain, he went to Delphi to seek guidance. The oracle told him to travel to the White Island, where he would be healed. There, on that sacred island, he claimed to have seen Achilles himself, along with Ajax the son of Oileus, Ajax the son of Telamon, Patroclus, and Antilochus. These were the great warriors of the Trojan War, now living peacefully in the afterlife. He even said that Helen, the woman whose beauty had started the Great War, was now the wife of Achilles on that island. She had given Leonymos a message to deliver to the poet Stesichorus, explaining that his blindness had come from her anger. Meanwhile, another tradition spoke of the Islands of the Blessed not as distant mythic lands, but as real islands closer to home. A king named Macaraeus, 7 generations after the flood of Deucalion, settled on the island of Lesbos. Finding the land beautiful, he made his home there. From Lesbos, he sent out people to settle the nearby islands of Chios, Samos, Kos, and Rhodes. These places were known for their clean air, healthy climates, and rich farmland. They became places of great abundance and comfort, and people began calling them the Islands of the Blessed, not just because of how pleasant they were, but also because they were ruled by the sons of Macaraeus. Over time, they became well known for their richness and peace, both in ancient days and even in the time of the writers who told these stories. The land was fertile, the weather kind, and the people prosperous, so they earned a lasting name. And there were some who said the reason for the name was simply because Macaraeus had once ruled there and passed his name down to the lands. Others, like the geographer Strabo, tried to explain these legends more rationally. He believed that the stories of the Islands of the Blessed and the Elysian Fields were based on real places known for their good weather and healthy air, like the regions of southern Spain or the lands near the Atlantic coast. These were the places where people heard about great riches, soft breezes, and peaceful lands. And so poets imagined them as where the heroes would go when their battles were done and the gods had judged their deeds. In that world after death, those who had lived with justice and kept their hearts clean through many lifetimes were finally allowed to rest forever. According to the older poet Pindar, the souls of the dead were judged after they passed, and those who had shown mercy and lived without wrongdoing were spared the labors of life. They were allowed to live in peace, with no need to till the soil or sail the seas for their food. They enjoyed a quiet life in a land where golden flowers bloomed by the waters and in the fields, and wreaths of flowers were worn on their arms. These wreaths were signs of their reward, given under the fair judgment of Rhadamanthys, who sat by the side of the great father of the gods. Among them were heroes like Peleus and Cadmus, and even Achilles, who was brought there by his mother after her prayers moved the heart of Zeus. This was the same Achilles who had brought down Hector and struck down Cycnus and Memnon, heroes of the east and south. Pindar also wrote of those souls whom Persephone, queen of the underworld, judged harshly for their past deeds. They had to return to the world and be reborn, but if they lived 3 good lives in a row, keeping themselves clean of wrongdoing each time, then they were finally freed from the cycle. On the 4th time, they were born as kings, strong men, or wise men, and were honored forever after. These were the ones the people remembered as sainted heroes, because they had earned their place by living rightly again and again. So the story of the islands of the blessed and the Elysian fields became not only a tale of paradise, but also a lesson of justice and reward, of judgment and rebirth. It was a tale shaped by poets and travelers, and though the places may have changed in name and location, the idea of a peaceful land after death, given to the good and the brave, lived on in every version, whether placed in the far west, on an island in a quiet sea, or in the heart of myth itself. After the passage of time, Artemis took Iphigenia away from the distant and cold land of the Tauroi in Scythia, a place known for its harsh rituals and strange customs, and instead brought her to the calm and quiet place known as the White Island, or Nessos Luik. It was a place set far from the troubles of the mortal world, surrounded by peaceful waters and gentle winds, where time moved slowly and nothing seemed to grow old. Here, in this sacred land where many believed Achilles now lived after death, Iphigenia was changed by the goddess. She was no longer mortal, no longer bound to the cycle of aging and death, but was made into an immortal being who would never grow old, never fall sick, and never die. Artemis gave her a new name, Orsilochia, which meant helper of childbirth, and she remained forever as a close companion to Achilles, sharing in his peace and honor on the White Island. In another tale, when Alcmena, the mother of Heracles, grew old and her life came to an end, the sons of Heracles, the Heraclidae, performed her funeral rites in the city of Thebes, near the Electra Gate, where Heracles had once lived and walked and fought. But Zeus, who had always loved Alcmena, sent Hermes with a special task. The god was told to take Alcmena's body away in secret and bring it to the Isles of the Blessed, known also as the Nessoi Macaron, where the most noble souls lived in happiness after death. There she was to be given as a wife to Rhadamanthys, the wise judge of the dead and brother of Minos. Hermes obeyed the will of Zeus and quietly removed Alcmena's body, leaving behind only a stone in the coffin to take her place. The Heraclidae, unaware of the change, carried the coffin until they felt it had become strangely heavy. Curious, they opened it and were surprised to find not their mother, but a stone inside. They took the stone and placed it in a sacred grove, and that is where a shrine to Alcmena now stands in Thebes. Meanwhile, in another part of the world, the fallen hero Memnon was said to live either in the underworld of Hades, or perhaps in the blessed and gentle lands of Elysium, where noble warriors and virtuous souls found peace forever. It was a place not dark and cold, but full of light and joy. Neoptolemus, too, the son of Achilles, was said to be taken there after death. His divine horses, Xanthos and Balios, who had once served his father in war, were believed to have carried his spirit to the Elysian plain by the will of Zeus, where the young warrior would live forever in the company of the noble dead. One story even tells of how the ghost of Achilles once visited Neoptolemus in a dream, appearing to him with all the clarity of life, only to vanish like the wind and return to the Elysian fields, where a road rose up to the heavens and served as a path for the feet of the blessed to ascend and descend between the divine and mortal realms. Others say the islands of the blessed lay beyond the edge of Libya, emerging near the quiet coast of an uninhabited promontory, where the land met the great open sea and nothing but silence stretched outward. Some stories add that Helen, once the most beautiful of all women, and Achilles had a child there, a winged boy named Euphorion, born not in suffering or pain, but from the rich and fertile land that nourished only joy. Even Roman poets believed Achilles had escaped the torments of Hades. One line says he never knew the void of hell, suggesting he never went to Tartarus like others, but was instead carried away to Elysium. In another verse, when Orpheus died and his soul left the world of the living, it passed into the winds and descended gently into the underworld, joining the places of the dead. Yet not all souls were lost to the darkness, for the tales of Elysium and the Isles of the Blessed kept returning, speaking of a hidden peace where death held no fear, and great heroes, poets, and the most noble of mortals continued to exist in light and honor, far from pain, in lands beyond the reach of sorrow. Then came the moment when he saw once again what he had seen before, that familiar place among the calm and green Elysian fields, and walking among the soft grasses and glowing meadows, his eyes surged with hope and longing until they found her, Eurydice, and his heart leapt with joy. She was there, untouched by sorrow, whole and radiant in the land of peace. He moved toward her and took her into his arms, no longer bound by fear, and in that embrace, all pain and loss seemed to melt away. Together they wandered hand in hand through the fields of Elysium, where soft winds whispered and the sun never dimmed. Sometimes she walked ahead, guiding him gently through the meadows, and sometimes he walked in front, his gaze turning back often, just to see her, without any fear now of losing her again. The danger that once turned a glance into tragedy was no more, and in this place of safety and calm, their love lived on without shadow. Far away, on the wide sea, during the voyage of the Argonauts, the helmsman Tiphys died, and though he had guided heroes across deep waters, he would not be remembered in prayers to find peace among the virtuous dead, for his passing was mourned without the comfort of hope in Elysium. In another tale, the White Island, sacred and silent, was named after a nymph called Luke, taken by the god of the underworld and changed after death into a white poplar tree. In Elysium she grew, her roots in that land of stillness and gentle light, and her leaves crowned Heracles when he returned from the depths, a sign of triumph and memory. The white poplar became a symbol, sacred to the one who ruled below, and its presence whispered of the connection between life and what lies beyond. In the groves of Elysium, where Rhadamanthes ruled with gentle judgment, The air was light and perfumed, the meadows filled with soft grasses and bright flowers, and those who walked there did so with untroubled steps, moving through the stillness with ease and grace. The place was not of silence alone, but of gentle joy, of music and games, of horses and contests, of laughter without pain. Some wrestled beneath blooming trees, some played draughts in the shade, some moved among incense-laden altars where fire flickered with a golden light. Roses bloomed in wide meadows, and golden fruits hung from trees near the city of the dead, and all was soft and slow, untouched by hunger, pain, or fear. There was no night in that land, though it lay below, for the sun shone always in strength, casting golden light on those whose lives had earned them peace. Beyond these meadows, however, stretched the realm of darkness, where sluggish streams of night rolled and gloom without end waited for those not yet ready for joy. And among these souls was the slow working of judgment, a quiet waiting that would lead some, in time, back to the light. For those who had suffered but still kept their spirit pure, there came a path of return. Persephone, queen of that quiet realm, would lift their souls again, sending them into life once more beneath the sunlight. And if, through 3 lifetimes, they remained just and true, she would then release them for the last time. They would be born not as common men, but as kings, heroes, or sages, remembered forever. And after that last noble life, they would pass beyond judgment, beyond return, to the islands of the blessed, where time no longer touched them. In these isles, born from the great river that circled the world, where the limits of Libya met the sea, stood that last resting place, the final home of the greatest souls. Here the grass grew high and soft, and a winged child was said to be born from the union of 2 who had died, Achilles and Helen, his name Euphorion, named for the richness of the land itself. The child flew through the skies of Elysium, untouched by weight, born of beauty and valor. Achilles himself never knew the sorrowful depths of Hades, for he had been taken at death to this peaceful place, where he walked in the soft meadows and dreamed no more of war. Even in dreams, he returned sometimes to speak with his son Neoptolemus, his ghost travelling on the soft winds, leaving no trace but the breath of memory, and then returning to the meadows of peace, to the Elysian plain, where a path from heaven reached downward, and the feet of the blessed moved with ease. The horses that had once carried him through battle, Xanthus and Balius, were to bear his son there too, to that quiet land according to the will of Zeus. There he would dwell in peace, far from the cries of war, beneath a sun that never faded. In that realm, even Orpheus found rest. After his soul had passed from the world, after his music had faded, and his voice was still, his ghost travelled through the winds to the underworld, moving past shadows and silence, until at last he found peace. He too walked those meadows where sorrow could not follow. In the hidden depths of the world, beneath the earth, beyond the reach of pain, stretched that land of joy, where the greatest of souls wandered forever, crowned in gold and shaded by incense trees. There, in perfect bliss, they walked and played and remembered, and their memory filled the upper world with stories and signs, and those who still lived could only hope to follow. For the truly pure, death was not the end, but a path to light, to a meadow where the roses bloomed forever and the games never ceased. The voices rang out from the distance, echoing through the depths of the underworld, as the sacred chorus of initiates lifted their hymn to Iacchos, calling out again and again with joy and fervor, their voices rising in rhythm and harmony, filling the air with divine energy as they sang to the God of the sacred mysteries, the one who dwelled in great temples and moved among those who were pure of heart and cleansed in ritual, the one who led the way through the darkness toward the light of Elysium. The chorus called him to dance with them on the green and peaceful fields, to join in their sacred revels, adorned with wreaths of myrtle, their songs filled with love and beauty and the holy charm of the graces, celebrating the God whose arrival always brought joy and light to those around him. They urged him to rise, to awaken from slumber, to grasp the torches that burned so brightly, and to guide them along the sacred path with laughter and music and dance. They called him youthful, full of energy and grace, the one who walked always with his chorus, stepping in time to the rhythm of celebration, moving tirelessly along the sacred way to the goddess who awaited him. The initiates, dressed in simple robes, sang and danced with hearts full of joy, laughing and jesting without shame. For in this realm, no one took offense, and every heart was lightened by the spirit of the God who ruled over dance and frolic. One of them even noticed a girl nearby, her robe torn in the celebration, revealing a glimpse of beauty beneath. And even this was cause for laughter and delight. For this was the land of the blessed, and in its fields joy flowed like a river, and the souls of the faithful were free to celebrate forever without pain or sorrow. They called once more to their leader, to walk beside them as they danced through meadows of flowers and rivers of light, their path never ending, for such dances were granted only to the holy by the fates who wove the destiny of all. And beyond them, in the realm where the truly wise had passed, one voice imagined what it would mean to arrive among the greatest souls of all. For if death was merely a change, a movement from one place to another, and if the stories were true that all the dead were gathered there, then what greater blessing could there be? To leave behind false judges and the noise of the world, and to stand at last before those who judged with truth and wisdom, to meet Minos, the son of Zeus, holding his golden staff, or Rhadamanthus and Iacchos and Triptolemos, and all the just who had become demigods because of their lives. For in that place justice was pure, and those who had lived rightly walked together in eternal peace. Their world was one of harmony, where light shone in the underworld, though darkness cloaked the world above, and in the meadows that stretched before their city, red roses bloomed in the sunlight. Incense trees spread their sweet perfume, and golden fruits hung from their branches. Some delighted in horses, others in wrestling or in games of skill and strategy, and everywhere the flower of bliss bloomed bright. Fragrance filled the air, drifting from altars where incense was always burning in honor of the gods. And just beyond the border of their land, the shadows of night spilled from sluggish streams, spreading darkness through the neighboring lands of the dead. But here in Elysium, there was only peace. And those whom Persephone judged worthy, those who had paid the price of their first wrongdoing, were allowed in the 9th year to return once more to the light of the upper world. From among them rose the great ones, kings, heroes, and wise men, and they were honored forever. For if such a soul lived 3 good lives, never turning away from what was right, then at last they were freed from the cycle of rebirth and journeyed beyond even Elysium to the islands of the blessed, where the river ocean encircled the world and the greatest of souls rested. And so it was that in the depths of the underworld, in places that should have been only cold and silent, there were instead fields of light, filled with the music of sacred choirs, the scent of incense, and the eternal dancing of the blessed. For those who had followed the sacred mysteries and walked the right path, death was not the end, but a passage into a realm where sorrow vanished and joy bloomed forever. There the initiates laughed and danced, led by the youthful god with the torch in hand, and the wise awaited judgment from those who had always been fair. And through it all, the sacred songs echoed, calling always to the one who brought delight and freedom, and whose name rang out again and again, guiding the souls of the faithful to the meadows of joy and the company of the blessed. To the confusion that clouds judgment, for when a soul is judged by those still alive, both the judge and the judged are wrapped in the coverings of the body, and these wrappings deceive the senses and hide the truth, and those with beautiful bodies or noble lineage or great wealth can appear good when their souls are wicked, and witnesses speak well of them, not because of the truth, but because of their name or power, and so justice is turned away from its true course. In the time of Chronos, there had been a law that those who lived with justice and holiness would, after death, go to the Isles of the Blessed, where they would live far away from pain and sorrow, in happiness and peace. But those who lived unjustly and without reverence for the gods would be sent to the deep dungeon of Tartarus, where punishment and sorrow awaited them, a place of darkness and pain. But when the judges were mortal men judging others who were still alive, many unworthy people passed into blessedness, and many worthy were condemned. Then the rulers of the underworld, Pluto and the guardians of the Isles of the Blessed, went to Zeus and told him that the judgments were not fair, that people were being sent to places they did not deserve. And Zeus understood that the problem was not in the law, but in the way it was being carried out. He saw that it was not possible to judge a soul correctly while it still lived inside a body, for the body acted like a disguise, hiding the soul beneath wealth, beauty, and reputation. And not only the judged, but the judges themselves were blind to the truth, because their own eyes and ears and flesh confused them and muffled their understanding. And Zeus said that this must end, and so he declared a new way of judgment, that from now on, all people would be judged only after death, when their souls stood naked, with no body to hide behind, and no one to speak for them but their own deeds. And he appointed 3 judges to this task, Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Iacchus, great men who had lived with justice, and were now given the role of judging souls in the underworld. Rhadamanthus was to judge those who came from the east, Iacchus would judge those from the west, and Minos, with the staff of gold, would make the final judgment when the 2 others disagreed. And so the dead would now face judgment with their souls uncovered, and those who had lived good and holy lives would go to the Isles of the Blessed, and those who had lived unjustly would go to Tartarus. And in this place, where judgment was true, there would also be the possibility of meeting the souls of the great. And if the stories were true, and if the dead truly gathered there, then what greater joy could there be than to talk with them, and ask them questions and learn from them? For those who sought wisdom, death would not be an end, but a chance to meet the great minds of the past, to speak with Orpheus, the singer of songs so sweet they tamed wild beasts, or Musaeus, who brought sacred rites to the people, or Hesiod and Homer, who sang of gods and heroes, and to speak with Palamedes, who was wronged and lost his life by false judgment, or Ajax, whose honor was wounded and who died in sorrow, and to compare their stories with one's own, to find a kind of comfort in their words. And even more than that, the greatest pleasure of all would be to do there what was always done in life, to examine, to question, to search for truth among the souls who now lived in the world beyond, to find out who among them had wisdom and who only believed they did, to test their thoughts and to see how they answered when they had nothing left to gain or lose. What would it be worth to meet the one who led the army to Troy, to ask him what he thought of power and war, or to meet Odysseus and question him about his long journey and all he had learned, or to meet Sisyphus and ask him about cunning and fate, or to speak with countless others, both men and women, who had once lived with great deeds or great questions, now free of all disguise. And in that place, there was no punishment for asking too much, no threat for speaking freely. For the people there were immortal and lived forever in peace, and were happier than those who still lived in the world. And to pass one's time not in fear or regret, but in conversation and investigation, in the search for truth without end, would be a joy beyond measure. And all these things, if they were true, would make death not a thing to fear, but a journey to something greater, a place where justice ruled, and souls were seen as they truly were, accepts and restores to life again and again, for their souls, when they have returned to light and life, are sent back to earth, living many lives. Only when they have lived the fullest holiness, with wisdom and justice and purity, do they finally pass beyond the cycle of birth and death. The judges in the underworld carefully look upon each soul after death, but they see not the face or body that once was, rather the soul itself, laid bare without disguise or cloak. This soul shows all it truly is, its deeds, its thoughts, its nature, so that the judges without prejudice or error can send it to its just resting place. The souls that were wicked and harmful in life are sent to the deep prison of Tartarus, a place far from light and peace, where punishment waits to cleanse the unjust. But the souls that lived lives of truth, courage, kindness, and justice are sent to the Isles of the Blessed, a shining place far from pain and sorrow, where life is calm and joyful, and the soul finds rest. The judges do not know whose soul appears before them. They see only what the soul has become through life's trials and choices. Sometimes a humble soul, once unknown in the world but noble in heart and deed, comes before them, and the judges feel respect and send it to the blessed isles. The great judge Minos holds the final word when the others are uncertain, his golden staff shining in the shadowy court, guiding the final decision with wisdom and fairness. This place is described in ancient tales, like those told by Homer, where Minos sits in judgment among the dead, a symbol of justice that does not fail. The souls who come to this place may have been priests or priestesses who knew the sacred rites, or poets with heavenly gifts, whose words and songs lifted the soul and opened it to higher truths. These souls may return many times to the world, living and dying again, learning in each life what holiness means. Only after living many lifetimes, learning justice and purity, can a soul finally escape the endless cycle of rebirth and enter the Isles of the Blessed for good. This belief teaches that life is a journey of growth and learning, that the soul is eternal and passes through many trials until it is ready to rest in peace. In the underworld, the souls are no longer hidden behind the veils of the body, no longer judged by the opinions of the living world, but known truly by their own nature. The judges see with their souls, stripped of all earthly coverings, and bring true justice for each soul. This truth brings hope to those who live rightly, for it promises a reward beyond the troubles of this world, a final home of happiness and rest. And so, the story of the soul's journey after death is told not as an end, but as a new beginning, a passage through judgment to a place where the greatest souls find peace, where the just are honored, and where the soul can be free forever, are neither punished nor rewarded, but dwell in a shadowy existence, a kind of neutral place where they wait, Yet those who have lived wickedly are sent to the dark prison of Tartarus, where they face torment and suffering as a punishment for their deeds. But the souls that have lived pure and just lives are led by their guardians to the beautiful Elysian fields, a place of peace and happiness where they may rest and enjoy the company of gods and heroes. This journey is not simple or straight. The soul's path is filled with many forks and turns, and it must follow its guide carefully to find its true resting place. The soul that is wise and orderly understands its path and moves calmly toward the light, while the impure soul is forced to a darker fate. In this way, the afterlife reflects the life that came before, rewarding virtue and punishing wrongdoing, and offering the pure soul a chance to dwell among the blessed. The judges of the dead watch over this process carefully, looking not at the body, which has been left behind, but at the soul itself, stripped bare and revealed for what it truly is. This just judgment ensures that each soul receives its rightful place, whether in the joyful fields of Elysium, the shadowy realms of the uncommitted, or the fearful depths of Tartarus. The souls in the Elysian fields live in a perfect state, free from pain and sorrow, enjoying the gentle sun and the shade of sweet trees, while those who must suffer are isolated in darkness. Through this cycle, souls may be reborn again and again, returning to life to learn and grow, until finally they have reached the fullness of wisdom and purity. Only then are they freed from the endless cycle of birth and death, and may rest forever in the Isles of the Blessed, the highest realm of happiness and peace. The mysteries and the sacred rites performed on earth serve as a guide for souls, showing the way through the twists and turns of the afterlife journey and offering hope for the soul's final release. Thus, the soul's journey after death is seen not as an end but as a long path of transformation, judgment, and ultimate reward, where the greatest heroes and wisest men find their home beyond the mortal world. They have completed their service and fulfilled their duty with justice and wisdom, not seeking power for glory, but accepting it as their role for the good of others. They are not praised with empty words nor rewarded with riches, but something far greater is given to them after death, for they are judged to have lived in true goodness, and their souls, when separated from their bodies, are not kept in the lower places of the earth, nor do they pass through the common gates of Hades, but are led upward to a purer realm, to the Elysian fields, where the air is bright and clean, and where no evil dwells. There these souls, shaped by a life of understanding and discipline, are received with honor, becoming like demigods, no longer bound by the cycle of birth and death. Their wisdom, their justice, their selflessness, all that they cultivated in life, becomes their key to dwell forever in a realm where truth is clear, where the light does not fade, and where no sorrow touches them again. But those who have lived unrighteously, who gave themselves to falsehood and cruelty, find their souls made like the pattern they followed, and their lives continue to reflect that pattern. They remain in the company of others like themselves, both in this world and in the next. And if they do not change, if they hold fast to their cleverness and deceit, then the land of the blessed will not open its gates to them. For that land, which is pure and without evil, can only be entered by those who have turned away from darkness. The souls of those who committed great wrongs are judged, and when their evil is too deep, too fixed in their nature, they are cast into Tartarus, never to return. They do not suffer for a time and leave, but remain there as a final sentence, lost to the world of light. But others, those who did wrong and can still be healed, are sent to the places of punishment, where they face their penalties, and after their souls have been purified, they may rise again. Those who have done good are rewarded in equal measure, sent to Elysium to live in joy. And among the best of these are those who have loved wisdom and practiced philosophy, who purified their souls not only through deeds, but through deep understanding. These rise higher still beyond even Elysium, to places more beautiful still, which words cannot easily describe, for those places are not of this world. Their souls are free of bodies now and no longer need them. These are the souls that belong to the golden race, as the old poet said, those whose goodness was beyond human measure. When they die, whether in battle for justice or in peace after a life of service, they are not buried as ordinary men, but honored as spirits, their graves tended with reverence, their names remembered as protectors and guides. They are believed to walk the earth still, guarding those who speak with reason and live with care, and in their memory sacred rites are performed, not to mourn them, but to honor their place among the holy. And so the story continues in the realm of souls. Each is led by a guardian spirit, a daimon, assigned at birth and guiding the soul through life and beyond. When death comes, this guide brings the soul to the place of judgment, where it is examined not by words or appearances, but by what it truly is. The soul carries with it only what it learned, what it practiced, what it became through choice and thought. All honors, wealth, and strength are left behind, and the judgment is just. The pure go to peace, the impure to punishment, the mixed to a place of waiting. The roads are many, not one, and the journey is long. But for those who live with care, who seek wisdom, and who love truth, the end is not darkness, but light. They pass beyond the prisons of the earth, beyond the pain of rebirth, and find their place in the calm meadows of the blessed, where the sun shines softly, and the soul, free at last, knows only peace, where the air is clearer and the sky is softer, and over our heads the stars shine with their own special light, and our sun rises not in the same way as in the world above, but gives a warm and gentle glow that fills these fields with peace. Here we rest without fear or pain, and each soul finds joy in its own way. Some delight in games upon the grassy plains, wrestling and racing as they once did in life, not with struggle, but with laughter. Others move in rhythm, dancing with calm steps, their bodies free from weariness, while songs rise all around, soft and sweet, sung in praise of the life that once was and the peace that now is. The music of the lyre flows through the air, played with skilled hands by the Thracian priest, who guides the sound with his fingers and an ivory quill, filling the groves with harmonies that echo through the trees and touch every soul. Around them gather those who lived with purpose and honor. There are the founders and heroes of Troy, proud in spirit, even in death. Their chariots and spears, once held in battle, now rest peacefully in the earth, while their horses, no longer yoked for war, roam freely through the open fields, sleek and calm. Even now, in this gentle place, they take care of their gear, polishing armor and feeding their steeds, not out of need, but from love of the life they once knew. To either side, others sit in small circles on the grass, singing together beneath the green shade of the laurel trees. Their songs are full of joy, not sorrow, and from the grove the sound of their voices flows out like a river, gentle and strong, rising up with the scent of leaves and blossoms. Through this grove runs the sacred river, the Eridanus, shining like silver and moving in silence, not as water, but as light. Along its banks rest those who gave all for their country, their wounds now healed, their memories full of pride. Nearby are the priests who lived in purity, the singers whose words were worthy of the god of light, and the inventors who brought beauty and skill into the world. Those who served others and earned honor by their lives are here too, and all wear white bands on their brows, bright and soft as snow. These headbands mark them as blessed, set apart by their virtue and remembered for what they gave. In the middle of this wide gathering stands a poet, taller than the rest, known and loved by all who come to this place. Around him the others cluster, drawn by his presence and the calm power he carries. When the guide of souls asks him where the one they seek is resting, he replies that here no one has a fixed dwelling, for each soul finds peace not in walls but in wandering, and they live by the water and among the trees, wherever their hearts are most at ease. They are not bound by time or space, and their joy is not broken by hunger or sorrow. They live in this light and soft air, always surrounded by calm voices, gentle rivers, and the touch of the breeze through the grass. This is the place to which the good are brought, beyond pain, beyond fear, where all their goodness is rewarded not with gold or power, but with rest, memory, and joy. Here the fields are not for battle, but for peace. The roads are not for war, but for walking hand in hand. The voices are not raised in anger, but in song, and the sky is not filled with storm, but with soft light and quiet stars. In this land, the soul knows its true self. It forgets the noise of the world above and remembers what matters. Here, life is not measured in years, but in peace. Time does not hurry, and the sun never burns. Those who arrive in this place have earned it not by chance, but by the path they chose. Whether they fought with courage, lived with truth, sang with beauty, or served with kindness, all are equal now, joined in the quiet harmony of Elysium. This is the right-hand path from the place of judgment, the road that leads to the blessed fields, while the left leads down into the cold and pitiless dark, to the prison of the wicked, where no joy waits. But here only joy remains. The wind whispers through the groves, the river shines under the trees, and the souls who walk there walk without fear, without pain, and without end. Long punishment, and for the sins they carried in life, they must suffer after death. Some are hung on display, stretched out in empty space, and the winds lash their guilt away. Others have their sins washed out beneath a great river or scorched away by fire. Each soul pays its penalty. Then we are sent to Elysium, the joyful plains, until the circle of time, when the stain is finally worn away, has been completed. Only then does the soul regain the pure essence of the divine, cleansed of all its shadows, and ready to return once more to the world of the living. So it is that when 1,000 years have passed and the long cycle turns again, the souls are called back to the river Lethe, where they drink the waters of forgetfulness. With memory erased, they are prepared once more to enter a new life in a new body, carrying only the hidden echoes of what once was. And so, when father and son stood there beside the stream, Anchises pointed one by one to the souls drifting silently in the veil, waiting their return to the world above. He showed Aeneas his descendants, the noble line that would rise from him, and the mighty deeds they would one day perform. One by one he named them, spirits not yet born, but already shaped in destiny. Some were destined for greatness in battle, some for wisdom in peace, some for founding cities, some for guiding laws. Their faces were still ghostly and pale, but already the trace of future strength could be seen in their gaze. There were kings and leaders, priests and poets, defenders and builders of a world not yet made. As they floated through the golden light, their brows seemed touched by a flame that marked them for what they would become. Aeneas looked on in awe, and the grove around them seemed to hum with meaning. The river flowed gently through the meadow, its waters calm, but beneath its surface moved the quiet power of change. Those who drank would forget all sorrow and all joy, all pain and all love, leaving behind even the memory of their own names. They would be reborn as children, unknowing, fresh with hope, but bearing in the hidden parts of their soul the faint weight of their former lives. Some would rise swiftly, others would stumble and fall. Some would repeat their mistakes, while others would grow wiser through each return. It was the law of the world, set down by the powers above, that no soul could escape this cycle until it had learned all that must be learned. And in this place, quiet and green, that law unfolded without noise, without judgment, only with the rhythm of time. Aeneas stood still beside his father, listening, watching, learning the truth of life and death, of soul and fate, of guilt and release. He saw now that Elysium was not just a reward, but also a resting place between struggles. It was a time of healing, of reflection, of being made whole again after the burden of flesh and sorrow. He saw that even those who had lived well were not always free at once, for all carried some shadow, some mark from the world above. And yet, there was no fear here, no cruelty, only a deep justice, slow and patient, shaping each soul as the wind shapes the mountain. Anchises spoke softly as he led his son through the trees, his voice blending with the whispers of the leaves and the quiet murmur of the stream. He showed him the heroes yet to be born, the cities yet to be built, the temples yet to be raised. He spoke of a future carved out by hands not yet formed, guided by hearts not yet beating. And Aeneas listened, not just with his ears, but with his whole being, feeling the weight and wonder of what was to come. He saw that his own journey, his own trials, were part of something far greater, a story that would stretch across ages, across lands, across lives. As they moved through the Elysian light, Aeneas felt a quiet resolve settle in his heart. The past and future stood before him in a single breath, and he knew he must carry both as he returned to the world. For the souls that rose from Lethe would look to him, and the future he had just seen was waiting to be born. And so, beneath the soft sky of the fields of joy, among the river of forgetfulness and the grove of remembrance, the souls waited in silence until their time would come again. The Western Ocean, places far from the known lands of the world, thought to be favored by the gods. These were imagined as places where the sun set into golden waters, where the winds were mild, the fields fertile, and the air sweet and healing. And to these islands came only the most fortunate of souls. But before the soul could reach these happy shores, it had to pass through the long trials of purification. After death, the soul did not rise directly into bliss, but wandered first through shadows and trials, carrying with it the burden of past sins and memories. Each soul was marked by the life it had lived, and that mark clung to it like smoke clings to fire. Some were lifted by gentle winds, but others were bound by chains of their own making, cast into darkness, where the winds tore at their forms or where fire licked their spirit clean. Others stood waist-deep in whirling rivers that churned through the underworld, sweeping away the heavy stain of guilt in their cold floods. These rivers, dark and deep, flowed forever through the land of the dead, circling back and forth like time itself, never still. For some, the burning was long, the flame slow to die, as if the sin was too thick to leave quickly. But when enough time had passed, and the wheel of years had turned its full circle, when the weight of guilt had been cast off, and the soul had at last remembered its true nature, then the journey turned toward peace. The chosen few, the ones who had endured and shed their burdens, were guided to the green fields of Elysium. There the sun shone differently, brighter and softer than the harsh light of the living world, and the air held no pain. The ground was soft and alive with colors, the breeze warm and filled with song, and laughter echoed far and wide. These souls did not weep any more. They danced, they played, they remembered only joy. But even this was not the end. After 1,000 years, when the soul had rested enough, when the heart had healed and the spirit had become pure again, the time came to return. The god called them, one by one, to the river of forgetting. At Lethe they drank. They drank deeply, not in sorrow, but in readiness. Each sip washed away the memories of past lives, of pain and joy, of names and faces and all the stories they once carried. Their souls became blank again, like smooth stone, ready to be carved by new time. Once empty of memory, the soul could return to life, stepping once more into the light of the living, unaware of where it had come from, but shaped deep inside by the trials it had passed. When this was told to the son by his father in the quiet grove, the son listened in silence, while the wind moved through the tall grass and the trees whispered above them. Together with the guide, they passed through the souls waiting their turn, and came to a rise where the father could look upon the long line of those still to be born. He pointed to each one, not with sadness, but with hope. These were not just spirits, but futures. Some would be kings, some would be poets, some would fall and some would rise, but each would carry forward the story, shaped by what had been, even if they would not remember. And in that crowd of light and shadow, the son saw not only strangers, but reflections of his own path. He saw his task, his legacy, his burden, and his gift. Then the father led them toward the exit, not through the horn gate which released only true souls, but through the ivory gate, the gate of dreams. This was the path for those not yet done, for those still bound to the world. And so they passed through, leaving behind the fields of rest. In another telling, the queen of the underworld did not wish to leave her realm, for even though the earth above called to her, there was peace in Elysium, and she had learned to love its quiet. While some were cast into darkness for their sins, others were gently lifted across the water, crowned with garlands and fanned by soft winds, taken to the meadows where the roses bloomed forever. These were the souls who had lived with honor, who had sung with truth, who had found meaning in their days. They moved now through a place without pain, touched by light that did not burn. In far-off lands, others told of islands beyond the seas, where the blessed lived forever, never touched by storm or hunger. These islands, kissed by warm winds and golden air, were said to be real, though none could reach them in life. There, it was said, the gods themselves walked among the dead, and even the great heroes of old rested there, free at last. The truth was always wrapped in mystery, for no living eye could truly see these places. But the stories lived, and they shaped the hearts of men, guiding them to live better, to choose wisely, to carry their own fire through the darkness. For every soul, the journey was long, first through fire, then through water, then through silence. But at the end, for some, there was Elysium, and from Elysium, one day, there would be a return to his path with a gentle touch, guiding him with silent steps along the banks of the great river where all memories are lost. Around them flowed the dark waters of Lethe, calm and wide, never hurried, as if they had all the time in the world to wash away what the soul once carried, The boy, newly passed from the world above, looked around with wonder, seeing shapes in the distance, spirits slowly moving, some still burdened by sorrow, others light as air, already touched by peace. The guide moved without sound, leading him past groves of shadow and light, where voices murmured soft songs not heard by mortal ears. Across from them, the Elysian fields spread in golden haze, lands where the sky glowed softly and the grass shimmered like morning dew, a place untouched by pain. And though the boy did not yet belong there, his path was made known. The gods had marked him, for his life had ended not by anger or crime, but by a sacrifice that fate had demanded. In that act, he had risen above his age, and now, free from sorrow, he was counted among the few allowed to walk the lands of joy, far removed from the darker halls where so many of his kindred were forbidden to enter. His body above lay untouched, the forest animals and birds guarding it in silent mourning, while his spirit was held safe beneath the sky that never darkened in Elysium. Even the trees, even the winds, seemed to know his name. Far off, the deeper parts of the underworld stirred with other movements, for in the hidden places beyond the reach of Elysium's calm, a ritual was unfolding. The seer, with hands raised, called to the shades, breaking the silence between the worlds. From across the depths, the spirits of the just were led gently by the one who guided the good, while the lost and wicked were driven in greater numbers by the fury of the dark ones. The two crowds moved in opposite streams, never touching, the air itself parting to keep them apart. And beneath it all the earth shifted again, for another had entered, one not dead by the usual way, but swallowed alive by the land itself. His arrival broke the stillness, startling even the spirits who had long forgotten surprise. His armor still clung to him, and his eyes burned with knowledge not meant for the dead. The gates had not opened for him, no guide had come, no mark had yet been made to welcome him or turn him away. The spirits paused in their paths, even those of the blessed, and watched him, unsure if he was meant to be among them, or if some mistake had stirred the threads of fate too soon. The keepers of order, the ones who spin and cut the thread of every soul, stopped in their task for just a moment, their hands frozen by doubt. Then slowly the judgment began, and the order returned. The newcomers were sorted once more, the blessed led again to their meadows, where the birds of the sacred skies flew without fear, watched perhaps even by the hidden eyes of the king below. Above, far from the places of judgment, in a land where great mountains rose and the earth trembled with fire, the goddesses who stood between life and death walked with grace. One was mistress of the hunt, another of wisdom, and the third of the shadowed realm. She who had been taken once now ruled with quiet strength, her crown unseen, her power heavy in the roots of the world. Among the groves where her voice could still be heard, she moved with the others, shining like the stars. Elsewhere, a soul newly arrived felt the gentle hand of the guide brush his cloak, a signal without words. The boy rose, drawn forward, not by force, but by the calm knowledge that his journey had changed. Around them, others came and went. Not all entered the golden plains. Many paused at the river's edge, unsure, their memories fading, even as they clung to fragments of who they were. Those who had harmed without regret, who had moved through life leaving only shadow behind, were turned aside. They were pulled to darker waters, their trials not yet ended, but a few were given peace. Their steps grew light, and they passed through mists into lands where the winds were soft and the sky forever glowed. The living could not follow, but the dreams of mortals sometimes reached that place. Stories told by poets, whispered in temples, painted in stars, all spoke of that land. Some called it the Fields of the Blessed, others the Fortunate Isles, and though no ship could sail to it and no road led there, the name remained in the hearts of those who hoped. Even when memory faded and names were lost, the feeling of it lingered, a quiet longing for light after darkness, for joy after sorrow. And so it was told that the souls who had earned their place would one day rise again, passing through the river once more, the touch of forgetfulness leaving, them blank but not empty. They would return to the world above, not knowing where they had been, but carrying deep within them the echo of the fields, a silent guide to live well again. And while the cycle turned, while time kept its endless rhythm, the gates remained open to those who proved worthy. Some would wander, some would wait, but all were watched by the unseen hand, measured not by gold or pride, but by the quiet weight of their choices. And those who passed were not gone. They walked the meadows, they danced in light, and their names, even if forgotten by men, were whispered by the winds that moved through Elysium forever. Spirits of the blessed, and grant smooth passage to the shade who comes not with guilt, but with peace in his heart. Let the way be free from terror, and let no shadow rise to block his step. He who draws near now is not burdened with rage nor stained by wicked deeds. His end was gentle, as if sleep had touched him lightly and then lifted him away. So let him move without fear into the meadows that lie by Lethe's gentle flow, where the grass stays green and soft beneath eternal light, and no wind ever carries sorrow. Let him walk where the noble dead have walked, where the great poets sing without end, and the music of their voices rises like mist in morning sunlight. There among them he will find his place, not as a stranger, but as one already known by the land, already welcomed in quiet ways. Around him the air will be clear, and every breath will carry peace. Flowers without thorns will open by his steps, and no memory will trouble him, only soft joy and gentle wonder. For in that place no grief is sharp, and no pain lingers. The shades who gather do not cry, but remember with calm the days they once knew, like stories told at twilight. The soul, freed from the weight of flesh, no longer feels the pull of earth or the ache of longing. Instead, it drifts easily through sunlight that never fades. And when love follows after, when the living still remember with tears, the joy of that shade is not lessened, for all that was kind in life is made brighter there. There he joins the circle of those who have sung before him, the voices of wisdom and verse, and his own voice blends with theirs, neither louder nor softer, but in harmony. He listens, he learns, and he sings again. And those who loved him and remain above, when they dream or wonder, may feel a quiet warmth without knowing why, as if the distance between worlds had grown small for a moment. The flowers he is offered do not wilt, and though their colour is pale, they are whole, unspoiled by time. The birds around him do not call with sharp cries, but in soft tones like whispers of old lullabies. And though he is surrounded by shades, there is no fear, for each one is marked by light and kindness. Here no fury walks, no beast snarls, no shadow leaps from the dark. The gatekeeper's 3 heads sleep, and the hallways echo only with footsteps of the good. In that place one does not look back with regret, but forward with stillness. The throne of the silent king remains far off, but not cold, not cruel, only watching, always knowing. And beside him, she who once wept under the earth smiles now, her hands filled with the blossoms of peace, scattering them over new arrivals like gentle rain. When a soul that has been loved comes near, she sends out light. She calls out the old queens of the realm, who leave their halls and walk with bare feet to greet the new one. Their hands are full of garlands, their faces calm, and they lift the veil of gloom, so that the newcomer may pass into brightness. And when one soul is honored by the love left behind, when a voice still speaks its name above the earth with sorrow and grace, that love is carried into the underworld like incense. The prayers rise, and the old laws yield for a moment, letting mercy shine brighter than judgment. Then even the ferryman, who knows no kindness, looks upon the soul with something like softness, and holds still his oar so that the journey may be smooth. No monstrous form stirs from the shadows. The wild ones, those who bear sharp teeth and twisted shapes, stay far away, as if turned back by something stronger than chains. And when the soul steps down upon the Elysian grass, the land itself gives a sigh, as though it has gained something rare and fine. Others turn to greet him, not with words but with smiles, with light in their eyes. He is not asked who he was, for the land already knows, and the land does not forget. He moves now in a place where nothing is hurried, where no one waits for anything, because all is already present. The trees hold fruit, but no hunger. The waters run but never wear away the banks, and the air hums softly with music that has no end. This is the field of peace, where warriors rest without armor, where poets speak without books, where lovers walk without loss. And when he stands among them, no one asks what he did in life, only that he lived well, that he came with a heart open and clean. So he walks among heroes and bards, not lesser, not greater, only one of them. And in that realm where the river flows not to forget, but to ease, he finds his own rhythm, slow and even. Behind him the world turns, but he does not look back. Around him there is no shadow, only the gentle shape of time uncoiling, no longer a line but a circle. And if ever he listens closely, he may still hear the voice of the one who mourns him, not as a weight, but as a gift, like a hand laid upon the heart. That voice, though distant, follows him like a thread of golden light, not pulling, not calling him back, but singing. And so he walks, a soul at rest, in the green lands beyond pain, where the sky never darkens, and the gates are made of dreams, and the music never stops. The aged shade was lifted with care and laid gently down among the soft grasses that line the meadows near the river of forgetfulness. His form, though now only a breath of its former self, still held a quiet grace, and his spirit moved without weight as it settled into that sacred place. Around him gathered the spirits of the blessed, a calm and radiant throng, and from every side came noble voices and the soft footsteps of those who had once sung and written and walked among the living with purpose and wisdom. The bards of old Greece, those whose words still lived in memory, now came forth to honor the new arrival. They brought garlands plucked from the banks of Lethe, flowers touched with the faint glow of memory, not yet faded but softened, as if they too wished to forget sorrow. These garlands, woven with care and touched by the cool air of the underworld, were laid gently upon him, and he was shown the path that led through the grove where peace ruled and no fury stirred. That place was not dark nor filled with silence that pressed on the chest, but open and still, with a day that mirrored the light of the upper world, and an air that was fresh and clear, like the breath of the heavens drawn deep through the soul. There, where no curse lingered, and no shadow reached with claw or cry, the spirit could move freely, unburdened and clean. Beyond the grove stood the gates, and not both gates were alike. One, bright like polished ivory, gave passage to false dreams, those which wandered upward to the sleepers above but held no truth. The other fashioned a simple horn, rough and humble, offered a passage for dreams that carried truth and weight, and through that better gate the shade was pointed, where his presence might once more stir the heart of the living in quiet sleep, and in dreams bring the knowledge he once shared with words. It was there, from the dream realm where true visions passed, that his wisdom might return, like soft echoes of teaching and comfort whispered in the night. And even as the sun slipped below the rim of the world, descending past the horizon and sliding beneath the body of the ocean, it was not lost, but instead cast its golden light upon the lands beneath the earth. For even there, in the unseen places, it brought warmth and brightness, spreading its light through Elysium, the secret country where the good and just made their dwelling. It was not a place of shadows and fear, but one of gentle colour, where even the air seemed to glow, and the sky, though hidden from mortal eyes, opened into a great expanse of peace. And she who watched over the dead, who once had been taken into the depths and crowned beneath the soil, now stood with bright eyes and a crown of stars. Her light reached through the fields and the darkness of Acheron, and she welcomed each soul with a calm voice. The new initiate, who had passed the rites and known the deep mysteries, was shown not terror but joy, for to walk in Elysium was not to end, but to begin again in a better form. She, the goddess of the realm, bore many names. Sometimes she was known as the daughter of the Dark King, the one who held dominion over all beneath, and sometimes as the bright queen of a blessed realm. Among her many forms was one called Blessedness, and from this name came sayings and old phrases that passed from mouth to mouth, wishes that the dead go to peace, that their end be not misery but a step into something gentle and good. For to die was not always to vanish. The blessed were not gone, but dwelling in a place that could not be seen, where the sky was deep and full of stars unseen by those above, where laughter did not ring loudly but hummed like music beneath water, and where peace was not a gift given, but a part of the air itself. And so, as the shade settled and was led along paths that twisted through meadows and wound by quiet streams, the fields around him stirred with the footsteps of those who had come before. He was not alone. He walked among others who had passed with honor, with love, with courage, and with song. The grasses did not wither beneath them. The flowers opened as they passed, and in the distance, soft voices sang, not of loss, but of memory that had been softened, smoothed, and made whole again. No punishment awaited him there, no whip of fury or gnashing of beasts, no cries of regret, only the calm of the grove, the clarity of the day that never ended, and the river whose waters eased the burden of pain without stealing the soul. And in time, if the gates of Horn opened again, the dream of this place might drift upward like a mist, reaching the ears of the living as they slept, reminding them that the soul does not vanish, that the silence after death is not empty. It is filled with song, with slow footsteps, with the scent of flowers that do not wilt. It is filled with light that does not blind, and roads that do not end. It is a place where each good life, however small, however quiet, finds rest, and those who were once loved, who once spoke, who once dreamed beneath the sky, now walk where the wind does not bite and the night never falls. There they remain until all memory is dust, and even then they walk